Tension on deck.
Hey, good afternoon, Ron.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, 24 degrees right now where I am. It's like a heat wave. I got a short sleeve shirt on. It's unbelievable. The only thing I'm hoping today is that there's no fire alarms. No fire alarms. We'll be all right.
Oh,
So
that's right.
yeah,
That's right.
we gotta be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
What about
actually
yourself?
outside chopping down some of the ice today because we were getting a little bit of melt and the ability to take the ice off the top. So yeah, it's we're going through a little bit of a cold snap, getting a little bit of relief, and then we're supposed to get another storm or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
next
crazy.
Thursday, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy weather, but it's a lot going on out there. We have, as it says in the thumbnail, Mayor Mamdani. He's using a recent police-involved shooting in Queens to push forward his Department of Community Safety, which was one of the major things on his platform when he was running for mayor. But as we'll talk about, there's a lot of talk, not a lot of action, not even a lot of answers to what we think are very basic questions and questions that we've been asking since the very beginning, since his campaign, and we've talked about it, and we're going to talk about it again tonight. But we're going to break down the video. We have there's two parts to the video. There's the 911 call that the NYPD put out today in an updated release, and then the actual video of the altercation, the interaction from the body-worn camera perspective. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to give our perspective on that, and then talk a little bit more about Mayor Mamdani and his Department of Community Safety, and basically reiterate what we've said in the past, because he's trying to use this scenario and this incident as a catalyst to push forward the agenda faster and fast track it through, where I think this situation, this 911 call is an example as to why his Department of Community Safety is not going to work. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is a good, when we show the body worn camera and the job in itself, you're going to see why the social workers shouldn't be the first ones to go to these things. It's a prime example of the dangers that are associated with these type of jobs. In a previous press conference, the chief of patrol, Philip Rivera, I think it was also an EDP shooting. It was maybe a month or 2 months ago. He actually mentioned that, hey, these jobs are very volatile. They can turn on a minute. And then now Mamdani wants to use this as a springboard to say, hey, let me get my Department of, Community Safety fast tracked and get this going. But I think he's totally off base with this. I think like you said, this is just a prime example of why not to do it. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, it just, again, like you said, we're going to look at the video, and I'd love to hear what the people in the chat think about it. And we have Kwanin Calendar is saying Department of Community Safety is world without police. World without police is involved without capitalism. That's what they talk about when they're socialists, and that's what they want. So yeah, I mean, it's all part of the defund the police. He's already got $1 billion set aside for this Department of Community Safety, but he can't just create it. Now he's trying to find out from his lawyers, can I just do an executive order to establish it? I mean, these are things, don't you think, that he would have thought through and his team would have thought through prior to getting into office so that you can hit the ground running, And as we're going to see, you're going to see in the press conference that he held that he doesn't have any answers. So you want to get into the video?
Yeah, let's show the video and then we can talk about, like Sleepy Joe's talking about the training and we're talking about, we could talk about the hiring of these social workers. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics with this whole thing. So yeah, absolutely. I think we can get right into the video. So a shout out to Lily there. She's in every one of our podcasts. Appreciate sports. Joe Mango, Terry Manane, all great followers. Mike Freed, I saw in there. So a lot of guys with us. Throw your stuff up in the comments and let
Charlie.
discuss this.
Yeah, well, listen, we appreciate your experience. As everybody knows, we're very interactive with our chat on this show, and try to, I try to keep up. It's self-produced. I try to keep up with the comments every now and then. Rob throws one at me. I got to try and find it. But we appreciate the input. We appreciate your perspective. We're giving you the executive perspective. We're giving you our perspective from two executives, a retired chief, a retired inspector, and what we think about things. But your perspective matters as well. Hi, amazing Aunt. How are you? So I'm going to play the 911 call, and then we could talk about that.
New York City 911. Do you need police, fire, or medical?
So we want involuntary transportation.
I'm sorry.
All right, I'm gonna stop it because it's at the very beginning, so we don't have to go all the way back. You hear right in the beginning of this 911 call that they're calling for involuntary transportation. So just let's keep that in mind. In case anybody missed it, the first thing she says that she's calling for involuntary transportation. And then she wants an ambulance.
I need an ambulance.
You need an ambulance? What's the address?
Jamaica, New York, 11432.
The borough of Queens, between Order Your Car Streets.
Give me 1 second. It is between...
And you're requesting EMS, correct?
Yes.
Is this for a male or female, and how old?
Male, 22.
And what's wrong? Is he violent?
No, not now. He's just, he threw his fourth piece of glass. He's not hitting anybody. He just threw glass at, the wall.
Is anyone injured?
No.
Any weapons?
No.
And he just threw glass at the wall?
Yes, but last time when something like this happened, we called for the cops, and they said we should have called for an ambulance instead.
Well, normally both parties respond whenever you call for someone to have them.
Okay.
What's his first and last name? Where is he?
Jabez Chakraborty.
You said Jade?
Jabez, Jabez.
And can you spell his last name?
Chakraborty, Chakraborty.
Man, black, white, Asian, or Hispanic?
Asian.
How old is he?
22.
And what is he wearing?
Give me 1 second. Silver top, black bottom. Give me 1 moment, okay? Hello? Sorry about that.
Okay, hold for EMS and I am. Thank you.
তুমি কাপড় চোপড় করো ওরা আসতেছে আমরা কি যাবো করলে Driving to the lake, we should all go. Like, we all have things to do. You are the dad, head of household.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes?
Is he awake and breathing at this time?
Yes, he is.
And where is he in the home?
Yes.
No, where is he in the home?
In the living room.
What's your last name?
My last name?
Yes. And the phone number you're calling from? Correct?
Correct.
Assistance will be provided as soon as possible. And operator. Good luck.
Say that one more time?
I said good luck with everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
So, I mean, Amazing Ant is saying, you know, great dispatcher. I think the dispatcher did a very good job getting the information. But, you know, there's the key right there. Involuntary. First thing that she says is it's involuntary. If it's involuntary, EMS can't take them.
Did she call? Did the dispatcher call EMS and then EMS didn't answer? Was that what happened?
Yeah, I have that written down. Yes. Yeah, she transferred over to EMS. EMS never picked up. She got back on the line and asked, you know, basic life questions. Is the person conscious and breathing? And then
I mean, truthfully, that dispatcher did a great job because had the foresight to, you know, call back and say, hey, you know, let me get a little bit more information, which is vital to the police on a response of like that. The more information is the better. And I'm just surprised that EMS didn't answer, I guess, you know, but I can understand EMS not taking somebody that's, you know, involuntary. I don't blame them, you know, so.
Well, it's their policy. If it's involuntary, if a person doesn't want to go to the hospital, they need the police.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, I've seen jobs where they're involuntary and then they talk to the EDP and then the cops put the EDP in the bus and then they go 98, which means they go back on patrol. And then EMS takes the EDP who was originally involuntary is now suddenly voluntary. I don't know. So,
and what's it marked? 55.
Yeah. On this number 55, right? Was always home notification at residence. And guys would do 55 on 72 and Broadway. It's not a 55, brother. But
yeah. So
got away with it. So
yeah. Well, again, everything is you get away with it until something happens, and then you're going to get screwed, right? And then you're like, oh, but this is the way we always do it. That's why I always hated that line. This is how we do it. And if you're not doing it the right way, it's not the way you should be doing it. Just because you get away with something doesn't mean it's the right thing, and you shouldn't be doing it. You know?
Yeah. No, you could have just said 97H to Lincoln or whatever, you know?
Right, which is removed by an ambulance. So
right.
Amazing Ant saying working both EMS and PD, this is textbook. The question is, will the mayor interfere with all EDPs or just special phone calls? So we're gonna get into what actually happens. We're gonna show that video next. And it's important to remember part of what the Department of Community Safety is, and one of the things that he is saying is that he's going to allow the dispatchers to vet these calls out. Now, dispatchers don't necessarily have any field experience. There are some EMTs and paramedics that go from the field into communications for EMS because they are all EMTs at the minimum when you're a dispatcher. But you may not have much experience, much field experience to vet these things out. So I don't know what training they're going to get and everything else. And now, like on this call, are there any weapons? There's no weapons. The last time we called the police, they said to just call an ambulance. Well, the dispatcher was correct. Well, you get both respond. You don't just get an ambulance on any EDP job. That's the current policy, and that's the policy that Mamdani is trying to change to loosen up and free up some police resources. So, which is, I can understand you're trying to free up some police resources and allow other agencies to handle their own stuff, since the NYPD has always been a dumping ground of whenever anybody else doesn't want to do it, give it to the NYPD. And we add it on and just keep piling it on and piling it on, and then hold everybody accountable for all the shit that you piled on them. So, you know, that's part of the problem is, you know, how are they going to vet this? And then there's no weapons, but he threw 4 glasses against the wall so far. He just threw the 4th glass against the wall. Well, that sounds like a weapon to me. He didn't hit anybody. He may not be throwing it at anybody right now, but that's violent tendencies, right? That's showing violent tendencies. Throwing glass against the wall.
Hey, if you ever see me do construction work at home, you will see a hammer fly a few times. Both of my stepsons, Hayden and Andrew, will say, "Hey, I didn't sign up for this," and they would leave. So yeah, I guess it is a bit of a violent tendency. But yeah, no, I mean, hey, there used to be when and the 911 would give you a history. Like for ESU used to get a history of EDP jobs at that particular location. So I don't know if that's still in effect.
Yeah, you can right on your phone.
Yeah, so I mean that's good in itself, but it doesn't always tell the story, right? Because it could tell 97H to Lincoln or 55 or whatever. So you don't really get the whole, you know, good history. But at least you know there's been previous police responses and EMS responses to that particular job.
So to that point, and for those who aren't NYPD, don't understand, and Lily says she's confused, so hopefully we'll clarify it a little bit for you. And that's understandable because Lily is not a police officer and she's not NYPD. She works with police out in Long Island. But for those who aren't aware, in the NYPD, you have the ICAD system, right, which is a dispatching system. So you get a lot of information sent right to your phone. Right. We used to just have to ask all the questions on the radio. Right. And then for a little while, you would get it on the MDT, or, you know, you'll be able to pull up the job on the computer if you were logged in, if it was working, and if you actually did it. Right. So now the dispatcher, every time you're assigned a job, the job is sent to your phone, to your department smartphone. And on the department smartphone, you can just hit a link right in the job and it'll give you the history of that location, which could be problematic if it's a multiple dwelling building or anything like that. But in this case, it's a private residence, right? So you could, just like you just said, Rob, you hit the button, it comes up that he's had multiple EDP jobs in the past. I don't know, to be honest with you, how deep the information is on those jobs. And again, you're responding to the job, but you're going to take the time to open up each job and read the whole thing? Probably not, unless it's like, you know, and if it's a heavy job, you're probably even not going to even more because you want to get there, right? And so you got to pay attention to the road. Even when you're the recorder, you know, you're responsible from the center of the car to the right to make sure that it's safe when you're traveling, right? But so you have that information. So yeah, this dispatcher got a lot of information. That information is going to be put into the ICAD. The officers will be able to read that if they read the job, right? But they're going to get the job, nonviolent EDP. Maybe the job will say they're throwing glass. We don't know, right? So we don't know exactly what information they had walking into this, but we're going to talk about, you know, how they handled their approach and, you know, things like that when we go over their video. But just on this dispatcher job, again, I think the dispatcher did a hell of a job. I think she was calm, like I think Ant was saying, that she did get a lot of information, like you said. She came back on the line when EMS didn't pick up. She didn't just leave the caller hanging in the wind where either it rang forever or got disconnected. Now, I don't know the system. It sounded like she transferred it to EMS. EMS didn't pick up after a certain amount of rings. And it sounded like the system probably kicked it right back to her, which is fine. But she stayed on the line and she asked specific questions. And listen, these dispatchers have all prompts, and whatever the answer is, they have, you know, additional prompts to ask the questions and everything like that. So that's great. and she also, did a great job. So I give her that. But how much information do we ever have really going into this job? You never know all this information. And a point that I have to make, and that you're going to make, without a doubt, and everybody that's NYPD, EMS, that's ever handled any of these jobs and gone to any of these jobs, you ask, are there any weapons? Does he have any weapons? No. Just like we're going to see in this job, there's always weapons at every job. Anything could be a weapon, you don't even have to be in the house. That's why we're taught, don't let them stay in the kitchen, because the first thing that's available to people in the kitchen is knives, right? And we're going to see that in a bit. So, 92 Charlie, EMS is going to request PD because of the job. QC Beast is talking about Vinny Gadis, who died getting shoved into a mirror in the Bronx, right? He got pushed down, landed on a mirror. The mirror broke, cut his femoral artery. He bled to death. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, right? Every housing building has EDP sensitive locations. So, all right, let me see. Let me just try and catch up a little bit. James McNellis is saying, stop going to lift jobs. EMS goes there. If they can't get them up and they ask for additional assistance.
All right, somebody else mentions bring FD then. Why us? That's a great point. I think it was Sleepy Joe might have said bring FD. Why can't they send them to it then?
For a lift job, I agree 100%. There's more of them.
Yeah.
They're in better shape than most of the cops. So, all right, let's go into this is the body worn camera footage. From the one police officer. Now, I don't know why it's only video from one. Normally, when I watch these body worn camera videos from police involved shootings, they'll give you multiple angles from different officers' views. At first, I said to myself when I watched it, oh, his partner, maybe he didn't have it. Maybe it wasn't working or whatever. But then you can see in the video that the red light, the red ring is actually on. But they don't play his video for some reason. But the first video, it's going to play out. And then what they do is they replay it in slow-mo. And then we'll talk about it after. Anything, or you want to jump to it?
Okay.
All right.
Shit. Sucks. Ever since I've been watching videos, I don't stand by the door no more, bro. How you doing?
Are you called?
You called?
Yes.
You coming?
Yes.
Oh
Sorry,
my gosh.
sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Yes.
Baba, no!
Hey! Put the knife down! Put the knife down! Put the knife down! Put the knife down! Put the knife! Move! Put the knife down! Put the knife down! Put the knife down! Put the knife down! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Shots fired! Shots fired!
Baba, no!
Hey! Put the knife! Put fired. Shots fired.
So where was his partner? His partner looked like he was behind him, right? At the time they entered an apartment.
Yeah, I mean, they come in, and the first thing I'm going to say is, if you heard, did you catch? If you catch the comments of Officer White when he first goes up and knocks on the door, then he backs down off that little stoop, and he says, "Since I've been watching videos, I don't stand in front of the door anymore." Now, I know you were always taught in the academy, never stand directly in front of a door, right? You stand to the side, you knock. At this door, there wasn't a side to stand to. But he says, ever since I've been watching videos. So I say that just to point out, people sometimes criticize us for Monday morning quarterbacking these incidences and giving our critique and giving our perspective on it, on what things that might have been able to be done better, or tactics wise, especially from your point of view, with your tactical experience. And here, I'm not saying he's watching our show or anybody else on the Finest Unfiltered, but that's a perfect example. Cops watch, it's just the generation of today's cops watch a lot of social media. So they see a lot of these videos where cops get blasted through the door, or people start shooting through the door, or whatever the case may be. So he's making a comment right away. Ever since I watched these videos, I don't stand to the front. So just to the point of, that's why we do it. So maybe we can reach out and, we'll affect somebody's tactics or the way they look at things and way maybe they react in certain situations. So, and again, it's never to hurt anyone or to put them down. But yeah, to your point, Rob, I'm sorry. It looks like when you first go through the door, it's very cluttered, tight, and it's like a little vestibule. Then you go through that glass door into the living room. Now, I don't know if there's a staircase to one side or another that might lead to a second floor apartment, if it might be a 2-family or whatever. But so yeah, it looks like his partner's behind him the whole time, and there's not enough room for them to even be side by side. And as you can see in the video, as soon as they get into the living room, he starts coming at them with the knife.
So what I'll say is that he didn't do anything wrong. He did everything right. He literally goes in. He doesn't have his gun drawn when he goes in. He's in there to interview the person. He talks to the mother, I guess, at first. Then, like you said, that person grabs a knife, starts charging at them. He has the foresight to literally shut the door, which was great. I mean, that's textbook perfect. He probably can't back up any further because his partner's right behind him. What I hear him say is like, back up, or whatever. Again, he's talking to his partner, and I don't know if his partner's able to get back or whatever. It's all cluttered. It's a small little area. The guy opens the door that he shut, and comes again with the knife at him, and he discharges his gun. And you know what he did? He saved himself, and he saved his partner's life. So I don't see anything that was done with this that was wrong. It was textbook perfect in my eyes.
I agree. The only thing I might say is he might have asked the sister a little bit more about what's going on before they walked in. It wouldn't have changed anything. I'm just saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate, where he could have tried to garner a little more information about what's going on. She wouldn't have said he had a weapon, and because he didn't have a weapon prior to that, right? So maybe just finding out a little bit of a history before they get in. But like we said, like you saw, as soon as they get in, he doesn't even have time to introduce himself, to engage, to strike up a dialogue, nothing. As soon as he walks through with that female family member, he starts coming out of the kitchen with a large butcher knife. She tries to hold him back. They start retreating, which, just for everybody, that doesn't know, that we have no duty to retreat as a police officer. We can stand our ground in defense. But in this situation, he's not attacking anyone. He's not attacking the female. She's trying to hold him back. He's just trying to push past her. I agree with you 100%. He retreated to try to isolate and contain, which is exactly what you teach, right? Try to isolate and contain. It looks like, and I'll play it without the sound, but it looks like.
Well, I just want to say, I just want to say, you could ask that woman whatever you want, and she would have told you the same stuff that the 911 could. I personally don't think it would have changed anything.
No,
anything that would the outcome would have been totally the same. And in addition, as most of us do, we like to get eyes on first, because we like to, maybe as he was walking in, ask a few questions, but you're not gonna, stop and say what's going on and stuff. We always want to go in and see what's going on ourselves, because that gives us a better perception of what's going on. So, I agree. He could have. I don't think it changes anything. But that's what I say. So, but you're right. He could have asked for that additional information.
Right. And again, I'm not knocking. I think the kid did a phenomenal job. Good communication, loud, clear commands, giving direction to his partner. The fact that his partner didn't draw his gun and point it at his partner like we see sometimes is a positive. His partner, got on the radio after the shots were fired, but they were, listen, this is all within seconds. This is all within seconds. They're retreating, and it looks like as he's backing out and he closed the door, it looks like he tried to maybe look for a lock, and I don't think there was one. But as he's backing out, he closed the door. See him reach down there, and now it looks like he's trying to hold the door closed. But it looked like he reached down like he was going to try and lock it, but I don't think there's a lock on that door.
Well, he wouldn't have been able to anyway, because the lock would have been on the inside. So,
right.
But I think Baby Lou brings up a good point. I mean, did the police officers, seeing the officer, did that trigger the subject? And it may have.
Well,
so, but that doesn't negate the fact that we have to still respond to these things. So.
And contained but not isolated, technically. No, I mean, he's trying to contain him. Right. He's not isolated because he's in the house with the other people. I get what you're saying, Sleepy. And yeah, I agree with you. And that's the argument of Mamdani, right? That's one of his arguments, is that the uniform is what the trigger is.
And don't forget, EMS wears a uniform too. That could have triggered him just as much. So,
correct.
And as well as two social workers knocking on the door saying, "We need to talk to you," that could have triggered him. So you can hindsight 2020 all the time, but that doesn't mean that anything would have changed differently, right?
Right. And now, Grouchy Adventures. Someone in the administration mentioned a dual response with PD being staged outside. The problem with that idea is the mental health professional will take all day talking while jobs keep piling up. Well, there's that, and when you have the dual response, if they're not with the police, how are they responding? How are they getting there? How long is it going to take them to get there? The police are supposed to sit, like you've explained in the past with the program on Staten Island, right, where they had the dual response. You want to go over that real quick to remind the people how that plan was put into effect?
Yeah, that was the similar situation where social workers would respond to an EDP job, and what they would ask for is the police officers and an emergency service vehicle would park about a block away and wait and see what happens in the EDP job. Now, there's a serious liability to both the police, right, and to the social workers at that point. I mean, what happens if the social workers, it goes awry or the job goes bad? The police officers now have, 2 or 3 minutes to get over to that job. The social workers could be dead. So, I mean, it just goes that whole pilot program was a failure, and there was pushback from the unions, which I don't hear anybody pushing back. I don't hear the PBA, the SBA or the LBA pushing back, because those are the people that are going to be responding, right? Because you ask for the patrol supervisor to respond to these EDP jobs, or the platoon commander and the sector car. So I mean, what's going to happen? Where's the liability lie? And I think that's something, well, we can look down the road when we discuss this. You know, the liability on the 911 dispatcher, the liability on the social workers, the liability on the police officers and the patrol supervisor. So that whole thing was disbanded. That pilot program, they got rid of it because it wasn't working. It didn't work. You know, you're not going to stage people out down the block. So it just didn't work. And I don't think this is going to work, truthfully.
Right.
So,
and no, 100%. And like, to the point we made a little earlier, is that you look at this situation, how fast it evolved. And this officer had training. This officer went, used his training, used restraint. Somebody said that the officer showed great restraint. I agree 100%, because as soon as he got past the sister, well, I don't want to say sister because I don't know, the family member that was there, and now there's nothing between him and the subject with the knife. Technically, he's justified in firing his weapon at that time. But he was giving loud verbal commands to drop the knife as he was slowly backing up, because he was aware of his surroundings, the officer, and knew that he had a door which would create somewhat of a barrier. But, you know, they teach you the 21-foot rule, right? 21 feet. They say that if someone's charging at you with a knife and they're within 21 feet and you fire, even if you strike them, they still have their momentum that they could still reach you with that knife. So it's a slippery slope. People may not like this, but to a positive thing, and something that we see way too often, especially with adversaries with knives, I'm glad he didn't go for his taser. You don't bring out a taser into a knife fight. A taser is for physical resistance. You don't take out your taser when somebody is that close to you with a knife. If you have multiple people, maybe one person will have a taser out and try it if you have the opportunity and tactics allow it. But, you know, I'm glad that he went for his firearm. I'm sorry that this person was struck. I'm glad the person survived. And what's not shown is that they rendered aid, applied a tourniquet, requested EMS, got him to the hospital. He's had a couple of surgeries since, and he's going to survive. But things could have been a lot different if the officer would have took out his taser instead of his firearm, attempted to tase him. If the taser's ineffective, which it's ineffective more than half the time, right? Then what happens now? He's got to take the time while he's holding the taser to now unholster his firearm and go for his firearm, because as we saw, the partner did not have the room, the clearance to act with deadly physical force without his partner being in a crossfire situation.
Well, you know, we know that tasers don't always work, right? It depends on where the person's hit and how close. It also depends on the clothing, if the darts make contact. The other thing what I'll say is, this is a prime example of why you should always make sure your taser's on your weak side hand, because if he was going to go for his taser, then he could have. I don't think he had the time, and I would clearly suggest that he didn't at that point. It was way too close, and the person was armed with a knife. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Had he gone for his taser and tried first and missed, that individual could have still came forward and could have injured him or his partner. So he had his gun out. If he thought he could do something with the taser, maybe the person didn't have a knife in his hand, then he could use his weak hand. But You have to be very careful, right? Not to use your strong arm because or your strong hand, because we've seen incidences where police officers have accidentally shot people when they thought they were calling taser, 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 and then a round goes off. So you have to be very careful with that. That's very dangerous. So make sure you're always using your weak hand, your tasers in your weak hand. And I totally agree that the taser is rarely. I as a patrol supervisor, the first time I ever used a taser, I had a job in the 2-5, and the EDP, he had been breaking into apartments. He went from one apartment to the other, from the fire escape. He was kicking in windows. He was just out of control. So I went in and used the taser. Totally ineffective. That was the old black taser with the little button.
Box.
Yeah, the box. I shot him with it. Yeah. And I think I hit him. I remember now. I hit him. It hit him in the chest. I hit the button to tase him. He literally grabbed the taser wires and ripped the darts out of his chest. And I said to the driver, I said, I think we really need ESU at this time, because this is not working. One of the officers used his mace, and all that did was, all of us hits you. And then back then it was, if you remember, Jin Yi was a lieutenant at that time in ESU. They came up with the Y bar. Then the Y bar is a long 12-foot bar with a Y on the end of it, like this, shaped like this, with metal. And they pinned him against the wall and took him into custody. So yeah, you never know what's going to happen. So the tasers, all right, if you can, and the person's unarmed and you want to try it, sometimes they'll work. I'm not going to say they're great, but what I will say is, what's the saying? You don't bring a knife to a gunfight, right? You're going to lose. So that's unfortunately what happened. And that individual, and I've said it in the past, I've said it with the ICE officers, I've said it with other jobs, that individual brought the police officers there, and that individual caused his own demise by chasing after the officers with the knife, unfortunately. So, and I don't think social workers, I don't think EMS alone, I don't think anything was going to change that. I think that person was agitated to the point where maybe more information from the mom or the family, but he didn't have the knife at the time. So, there's not much more you could do. So.
No. And driver seat 1707 is asking, if that were an older woman, would they have shot? Unfortunately, I'm going to say yes.
Well, I mean, look at Sergeant Barry, right, in the 4-3, who shot a woman with a bat. She was elderly and she had a bat. It happens.
Yeah. And again, I mean, the scenario might change. He may be able to hold that door shut against an elderly woman, whereas this young man was able to push it open on him. So, and it's happened in the past, just like you said. It's tragedy every time. But like you said, we're responding to people's calls for help. There's a reason that we're being asked to go there, because people are out of control. People are in violent situations. People have altered mental states. Driver's seat, we're going to push back. Could he have tased that young man? I mean, maybe you jumped on late, but we just went over that. So rewind it a little bit. We just went over that pretty deep on the taser, that we don't think that the taser would have been the smart choice to even attempt. Unfortunately, because of the situation, the proximity from the subject and the officer, and the lethalness of a knife. You don't have the time to sometimes use less than lethal force and attempt to use less than lethal source.
There was an old saying with radiation, right? You needed, if there was ever like a gamma radiation, gamma is one of the worst radiations you could have. There's alpha, which is small particles. There's beta, which will travel a little further. Mostly alpha and beta are inhalation hazards, but gamma will go through walls and go everything else. So what the saying was, and again, it's similar to an EDP. You need time, distance, and shielding. All right. Those are three categories where then you can make a slow, methodical decision. This was dynamic, as we call it. This was so dynamic that the officer had to make a split-second decision. Okay, once that door opened and that individual proceeded again with the knife, there was no time, there was no distance, and there was no shielding. So the officer did what he had to do.
And you think that officer woke up saying he wanted to shoot somebody? No officer wakes up saying they want to shoot somebody and get involved in that. Now, this officer has, listen, people forget that officers are human. And we don't want to use deadly physical force. We don't want to, even if he survives, be traumatized by that incident. That officer now has to live with the fact that, you know, he's going to second guess himself. Could I have done mace? Could I have done taser? Did I do the right thing? Hopefully he knows he did the right thing. Hopefully he has the right people telling him he did the right thing. And, you know, we're here saying as executives with decades and decades of experience, Officer White, you did a phenomenal job. I'm sorry that you were put into that situation. I'm sorry that whatever mental health treatment that Jabez was getting wasn't enough to avoid this situation. But whatever, you know, in the cosmic world brought these individuals together, this was the outcome. And it was an outcome that we feel, by watching your body-worn camera, was unavoidable.
Yeah, I mean, the real problem that I have is the mayor, who is your top person in the city, right? Yeah. Appoints a police commissioner, proclaims that you're talking about law and order, goes and visits the family of the person that had the knife. So that's where the fault lies, is that where is the support for the officer? Okay, what message does him going to see the family and saying, well, we're sorry this happened and everything we can do, that I have a problem. You know, did he go and see the officer? Did he go and talk to the officer family? Did he see how the officer's doing? I highly doubt it. So that's where I have the big problem. That's to me shows he doesn't really care about the officer. He cares about his Department of Community Safety, and he's using this as a springboard to launch this as fast as he can.
Right. So you're reading my mind, because the next thing I was going to put up, right, is Mamdani's initial post after the shooting. It says, I've been briefed on an officer-involved shooting in Queens that occurred earlier today. The NYPD responded to a 911 call where they encountered an individual wielding a knife. The NYPD is assessing the situation, and we are committed to keeping New Yorkers informed as we learn more. I'm grateful to the first responders who put themselves on the line each day to keep our communities safe. Now, I read that and I'm like, whoa.
Right. Sounded good.
Pretty good. That's what you need. You need a leader that's going to come out and say, he's been briefed. You know, he saw the body-worn camera. He knows it's a good shooting. Even though he's got no law enforcement experience, to me, it's cut and dry when you watch that video that the officer was put in a position that they had no other choice. And hopefully he had senior police people with policing background, you know. And I say that because that's the one knock I really have on Commissioner Tish is that she did not come up through the ranks, does not know the culture, never experienced what her officers are experiencing, but had somebody there to explain, hey, listen, this is what's going on, like we're doing. This is what happened. He really had no choice. And to come out and say this is the type of statement that you need to try to keep calm, to keep the community informed, right? Be transparent, right? The press conference was given. They said that they watched the body-worn camera. They showed a picture of the knife. So that was done the night of. He puts this out the night, you know, the same day, and puts out this statement. And I think this is an excellent statement. It's showing that he's aware of it. He's been briefed. This is what really happens. You know, they encountered an individual wielding a knife. That's true. And they're assessing the situation, and we're going to keep you informed and thanking the cops for doing what they do.
Yeah. And then I'll tell you that
I was like, wait a second, who wrote this? You know, who wrote this? Because this doesn't sound like anything that Mamdani has
it all
said in the
sounds
past.
good, right?
Right? It sounds good. It sounds supportive.
It's not.
And he's not. What was it? The best thing that he ever said about cops during his entire, you know, run for mayor was, I'm going to work with the police. Never had a supportive statement, never said anything positive about the police. Everything that you ever saw about him was negative. But then to your point, now behind the scenes, Democratic Socialists don't like that. Wait a second. That does sound pro-police. We're not pro-police. And he's getting all kinds of, you know, pressure from the DSA and from his Democratic comrades in the city council and everywhere else. So what does he do? Just like you said. Now, I don't know that he visited the offices because the tweet didn't say that he spoke to the offices or he visited the offices at the hospital. Nothing, right? He wasn't at the press conference, which is fine. If it was a death in custody, he probably would have been standing there, or a death. If he would have, if this individual would have succumbed to his injuries, I think he would have been more involved with the press conference and with everything else. But he doesn't mention that he visited the offices. You're right. He doesn't mention that he even spoke to the offices. Did he even call them up and say, "Hey, it's Mayor Mamdani. Just want to check in with you.
Jeffrey.
You know, I'm glad that you're safe, and you know, we're going to look at this and you know, go through the process now. But you take care of yourself right now. I'm glad that you're okay." Doesn't say any of that. And what does he do? Just like you said.
Wait, so that to me, that first thing he did, the first tweet he did, okay, I'll quote a line from one of my favorite movies, My Cousin Vinny. Everything that guy said is bullshit. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, he's got comms people. It's a younger generation. You see these Kaz-like videos that are going on that he's doing, you know, dynamic, him walking through the door, you know, coming out in different rooms and everything else. It's a whole production now when he wants to put a statement out on what he's doing. But you know what? That's today's day and age. He's a younger mayor, he's 35 years old, right? So whatever. I don't have that much of a problem with that. But, you know, like you said, I loved it. I was like, wow, maybe I'm wrong. But then what happens? Just like you said, I spoke with the Chakraborty family over the weekend and visited Jabez in the hospital last night. No family should experience such pain. Jabez has lived with schizophrenia for many years. I have proposed the Department of Community Safety to build a mental health system rooted in prevention, sustained care, and crisis response, and one in which officers are not burdened with responding to such crises alone. So now he's trying to be positive, right? I'm trying to help the cops so they don't have to go alone and be involved in this. While we have been building and implementing the plan for this, I have instructed my administration to expedite this work. With regard to this case, the NYPD investigation is underway, and my administration will release body-worn camera footage from this first responders officer tomorrow. Jabez needs mental health care, not criminal prosecution by a district attorney. What do you think about the prosecution portion of it?
I mean, I don't know. Do you prosecute him for what? I mean, literally, he's an emotionally disturbed person. I mean, like the scenario I gave you earlier, the job I talked about where that individual, he was breaking into these apartments and like strangling people on their beds. It was crazy. He was going from apartment to apartment. So yeah, we charged him with burglary, you know, entering, remain unlawfully with the intent to commit a crime, which was the assault. Here, I don't know. Is there a criminal action? I mean, with possession of a knife inside the house? I don't know. You know,
you know,
Are you going to charge him with? You're not going to charge him with. I don't. I don't see them charging him with anything. He's an emotionally disturbed person. He had a knife. That's it. And we know that there is a a defense, right? One of the criminal defenses, and that's mental capacity and things like that. So I don't see them. And we know for a fact in the city of New York, they're not going to charge him. They don't charge regular people. So are you going to charge an emotionally disturbed person? So. I don't know. Is that what am I on base with that? Is that what he's talking about? Charging them? They charge them criminally?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, he was.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's under arrest right now. I don't know what the charges are. I didn't see what the charges are. I would guess they're probably going to charge him for charging at the officers at the bare minimum CPW, criminal possession of a weapon, and menacing.
Menacing is a misdemeanor.
Right. No, listen.
No felony.
No,
I'm just saying they're not going to charge a felony. Crime's down.
Right? Even assault, attempted assault. Is that
no, you can't do 110, 120, 03. So it's not.
Well, it always comes down. It comes down one level when it's the attempt, right? So does the attempted assault become a misdemeanor? I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Mike Freed, if you remember, throw the answer in there.
What's the 61 say though? Has a crime? Does it go
right? And listen, the Queen's DA, she's refused to comment. I guess she's withholding, her comment to see what's going to happen. And I agree with you that he doesn't need to be charged. He needs mental health, and what good is going to come out of charging him? Well, he's never going to do any time, right? Even if he's convicted, he's never going to do any time. The guy got shot. The guy got shot. I mean, that's pretty much punishment enough for his actions, right? If you think about it. Who in their right mind is going to, go forward with criminal charge? Now, listen, there are people that do heinous acts. There's question of is anybody in their mental capacity if they're committing crime because it's antisocial and everything else, right? So you have these people, it's just I agree. He shouldn't be charged. He needs mental health help. So I'll agree with the mayor there, but
I think if he gets arraigned, even if they go forward with it, I think that if there's a bedside arraignment or whatever, but I kind of see where the district attorney is just going to be to decline prosecution at that time. So you could charge him whatever you want, but I don't think it's going to go any further than that. So
I think that's
and then Modern Samurai was asking if I was making sure that the cops took everything in time. So I hope they did, right? And I know they're cutting back. So
I mean, driver's seat. I think that's a silly question. I'll just leave it at that. And like QCB says, if that person has a knife, then yeah, doesn't matter. It matters the color, the color of the weapon that's coming at me. I don't really care what the color of the person is. That doesn't make a difference. That has no bearing on that situation. When you look, I mean, take your blinders off. Seriously, I don't usually get hooked, but driver's seat, take your blinders off. Watch the video that we just showed you. I'm not going to play it again. Go on YouTube, go on the NYPD's YouTube site, watch the body-worn camera, and you tell me from your vast knowledge and experience what you would have done differently. And you tell me and explain to me what the color of his skin has anything to do with the way that job was handled.
And you know what? I'll take it a different way. I'll take it a little further. Nobody looks, I mean, I don't know. I can't say nobody, but
can't say nobody, right?
99% of the people, nobody looks at the color of their skin. What we do is we look at your hands, right, to see if you have a weapon. And only thing that officer was looking at was that knife. I can tell you honestly, and I firmly believe it, he didn't care about anything else but that knife coming towards him. Okay, and that's what he saw. So you could say, It doesn't matter what color he is. No, it doesn't matter. It matters what's in that person's hand and what's coming towards you and what the weapon's going to, what weapon they have and how can it hurt me or how can it hurt somebody else? That's what matters. So.
Now, I don't know if menacing CPW, if Grouchy Adventure is saying this is what he was actually charged with, or he's just saying that's what he could be charged with, which we agree he could be charged. If you're going to look at charges, I'm not going to say an attempted assault because he didn't swing it at the officer. He didn't, luckily, didn't get close enough to the officer. And then Limp Dick is saying, how about charges for the cops? So I don't even know. Again, please.
It's a justifiable shooting. So
absolutely, 100%. Anybody could look at that video and say he tried to back out. He tried to close the door to create a barrier between himself and the threat, and it didn't work. He tried, and the guy pushed through the door and kept advancing on him. So the officer did what the officer had to do. And,
listen, a couple of people in the chat have spoken about the fax machine, right? That the machine up at the range where you actually do scenarios.
Explain it a little bit more for those who don't understand. Because I know my mom's not going to understand when she's watching. Now,
yeah, I forget what
she's going to think it's a machine for fat people like me.
I forget what it actually stands for, but it's a fax machine is what it's. I
think it's like firearms and tactics simulations, something.
It's like a 3D, almost like a video, right? And there's a scenario presented to you, and you have a firearm which is attached to the machine. So if you draw the firearm, and you shoot, obviously not a projectile come out, but it'll shoot the individual, taser or whatever, mace, I think. And what they do is they give you a scenario and they see what you're going to do. And when you're presented with a certain problem, how do you react? And I can guarantee you that if you were presented with that problem where the EDP, you shut the door and the EDP opened the door and started charging you with a knife, every civilian that would have went through the fax machine, every police officer that went through the fax machine would have shot that person with their firearm because they didn't want to get stabbed, right? And when I did the re-engineering with Commissioner Bratton and with training, I wanted fax machines to be in every borough so that you could send cars for a couple hours to do training and stuff. But that was never pushed through because what is it? The department doesn't care about training. They only care about liability and getting you out there. They train you when there's something that they think they're going to be sued upon or something's going to hurt them. So, but absolutely 100% that, any scenario, any person, and then they have in the past put people like from the news media, council people, council members, anybody that wanted to go there can go through that training and actually you see that. And there's a big realization when they go through that, right? All of a sudden the light goes off in their head.
They always shoot.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Yep. And they learn. They learn that it's a great learning experience. So I don't know if that's still in effect, but they should put Mamdani up there and let him go through it and let's see what he does. He's great picking up a shovel and shoveling snow for the Department of Sanitation. Go through the fax machine and let's see what you would have done.
Right, I'm looking here. So Lerm Chip, whatever your name is, social workers would not have created.
What did you call him before, bro?
Limp Dick.
Yeah.
Because he's making ridiculous comments, but that's okay. Everybody in the chat is letting him know what reality is about, right? And then I think he said that I'm trying to find it. Oh, here, social workers would have just left, right? And then
hold on, if social workers would have just left, you think about the liability, okay? Just like us, we can't. If somebody's there and as an EDP, you just can't walk out and say I'm leaving. If social workers are there, and this person presents a problem or has a knife, then you have people in it. The mom could be stabbed. The other people in the house could be stabbed. You just can't walk out at that point. Yeah, social workers could have walked outside, but then what would have happened? Then the police would have responded, right?
But also, they're not going to have the training. They are social workers, right? They come from a different background most of the time than police officers, right? A lot of police officers are type A personalities. I'm not going to say that I know a lot of social workers, a lot of psychologists, a lot of psychiatrists, and I'm not going to say that I know many of them that are type A personalities that are aggressive, right? They're a lot more laid back, a lot more zen, and that's fine because you're trying to help people with their mental abilities. You're talking to people in a very calm tone. But listen, we know that when you talk to people in a calm tone, it doesn't always work, right? Who's to say that they would have backed out? They may have froze up and got stabbed up. Like Marlon is saying, fire detective, right? Member of the Finest Unfiltered. He said, yeah, social workers would not have created a scene, and Lermchip, they would have been dead in seconds.
Yeah.
So it's quite possible that they could have tripped over each other because they don't know how to tactically retreat. Like those officers tactically retreated. They backed out. They didn't turn and run. They backed out, watching, keeping an eye on the threat. Social workers don't have that type of training or experience. So I'm going to agree with Warren.
I see one social worker running over the back of the other social worker to get the hell out of there. So, what's that, Rob? Can you fill encyclopedias with the number of times cops could have shot and didn't? But that doesn't sell papers. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Here's the thing. I'll give you a statistic which I looked up. On average, and maybe that during COVID it was less, but 170,000 EDP jobs in a year. Okay, that's response by police officers. Not always the issue, but 170,000 EDP jobs per year. If you break that down per day, that's 465 jobs a day. Okay, 465 EDP jobs across the city, all 5 boroughs. Okay, so even if you broke that down, it's 100 jobs per borough, and I'm just averaging it out. Okay, and then the amount of times that an officer has to discharge his weapon and shoot an EDP are under 10. What I looked up was under 10. So you look at that statistics, and what's that? That's less than 1%. I mean, this is ridiculous that all of a sudden we need Department of Community Safety, we need this and that. No, we've been doing a great job. We've been handling a numerous amount of jobs. And unfortunately, because of the amount of jobs that we handle and the dynamics of the job and the introduction of a weapon into the job, the police officers on occasion, very, very rarely, have to take a firearm out and protect themselves or others. I don't see a problem with it. Listen, I've been on thousands and thousands of EDP jobs when I was in an emergency service unit. That's basically what that was, our bread and butter, right? It was that's barricaded EDPs. That's what we did, So rarely was a barricaded perp. Sometimes a barricade EDP turned into a barricaded perp. But whatever the case may be, there are a minimal amount of times that police officers discharge their guns. So to sensationalize 1 or 2, it's ridiculous. And to think that there's a need for a Department of Community Safety is ridiculous when they really should be saying how many jobs that the police officers respond to and do an excellent job. That's what they should be talking about. When you go across the country, there's SMIP, right? The Management Institute for Police, this run by Chuck Wexler, right? Yeah. So they took ESU guys and brought them in and started training throughout the country on de-escalation and how to handle emotionally disturbed jobs. So we were like the poster boys of that those jobs. And then now these guys are teaching around. Stephanakis is one of the great guys. He's in that. From Truck 10, you probably know him, Steph.
100%. Great guy.
Yeah.
His brother.
He goes around and he teaches all the other agencies how we do it because that's what Chuck Wexler liked, is that how does ESU and the NYPD respond to these jobs? How do they do it? And how do they have such a high success rate? So now to come in and say, we're going to change the whole thing. I think with social workers, we're just creating barricaded EDPs with hostages. That's all we're doing, you know? And I said in the chat earlier, I said, from this morning when John and Eric had mentioned it with Marlon, I said, here's the problem. What social worker wants to take that job? And then I would say, I hope that the social worker gets $1 million life insurance policy free of charge, because they're going to need it. So it's insanity.
You keep freezing up briefly. So you're coming in and out a little bit. Yeah, it's been going on a little bit. It's not at the Eric standard yet.
Yeah, I'm not on Starlink, so
not quite there with the Starlink though. So let me just saying, so should there have been a negotiator and a SWAT team there? Well, you know what? Had the officer been able to contain him in the house, that's pretty much the next step, is to call for emergency services, try to keep him contained. But you also have a possibility and a problem there. Like you said, now he's in there. If he's able to maintain that barrier where he had that glass door, that's optimal, because he can keep an eye on the inside and still remain safe.
Right.
But if he continues to back out at that point, like you said, now he's leaving them, that individual with the knife, even though he didn't try to harm the family member that was trying to stop him. Who's to say that now he's not going to turn around and we're going to have a tragedy because there was a female there and then his father was there. And I know it's his father, by, if you listen to the 911 call, she's saying, you're the father, you're the man of the house, you should be going to the hospital with him. So the male in the background that was in the kitchen with him and that other female, and if there's anybody else in the house that we're unaware of, you're leaving an armed person in that house now. So now you not only have a barricaded job, you have a potential hostage job. So,
right.
But, so now the criticism is, should there have been a negotiator and a SWAT team there? I don't know if that's a criticism or a question that's an option that they should have took in lieu of shooting at him and discharging their firearm. I'm not sure exactly which way you're going with that question. But then there would have been criticism as, why didn't you do something if there was a tragedy inside that house once the officers backed out? Then people would criticize and say, well, why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you stop the threat? Why didn't you take him into custody?
I mean, all the negotiators are from the detective squad, right? So they fall under the hostage negotiation team. So, I mean, usually they're only there when somebody's barricaded. I mean, when somebody's not barricaded, we don't request a hostage negotiation team, and you usually don't request ESU unless the person's, doesn't want to go into custody or is, a little bit more violent. But no, I don't think that would have been that's not the standard. That's not what they would have done normally. I mean, police officers, like I've said, have been handling these jobs dual-fold with just what they, responding by themselves. So, and usually what happens, they de-escalate the situation. The EDP becomes compliant, rear cuffed. Why are you cuffing me? Oh, because that's our policy. We're going to cuff you. Am I under arrest? No, you're not under arrest. We're going to take you to the hospital. You're going to see a doctor, and then you're going to get released. Okay. And they go. That's it. So.
All right. I guess Modern Samurai was asking about the super chats, but I see that he just threw one up there. So I'll read that off in a couple minutes. Thank you very much, Modern Samurai. We appreciate the super chats and the donations. As everybody knows, this is a self-funded, self-produced podcast. So we appreciate I don't even have a drink of water. There's one waiting for me outside my door for the next video. I was running late coming up to the video to log on. But so the super chat's there. We really appreciate it. We're going to read it off when I get down to it, and then we'll read it off again at the end. But like you said, what's he going to do about it, right? Because after this shooting, like we said, he's pushing for this Department of Community Safety, and in his statements, he said he's trying to expedite it. And so I think we've hit a lot of the topics and a lot of the subjects. And, you know, we've said this in the past, and I just don't think, I know that Lermchip, he's saying it's a character in an Ira Levin novel, and you guys don't understand sarcasm. I haven't read any of the novels. I don't know the character, so I don't understand any correlation. And believe me, I know plenty about sarcasm, and I do understand sarcasm because I'm one of the most sarcastic sons of bitches that we know. But I just don't appreciate certain comments that are derogatory in nature. So that's why I kind of went at you a little bit. But, you know, he's pushing for this Department of Community Safety, and I think we've talked about it in the past. We talk about it a lot today. A lot of people in the chat are in agreement that this is a slippery slope that Mamdani is going down, and this is a dangerous area. And this specific instance here, I don't think that you could use this instance to say that the officers and the uniform triggered him because there was not enough time for interaction. So I don't think that you could justify it one way or the other. I mean, if you spoke to him and he said it, that's one thing. But, you know, there's no interaction to look at this and say that the officers went in there. The officers went in there overly aggressive. The officers got physical with him. Anything like that, like people complained about in the past that the officers were overly aggressive. These officers were very demure. They were polite to the sister. Well, I'm sorry, I keep saying the sister, but to the female family member. They walked in there and never had any opportunity to engage with the subject. So I think this is it's his first one that he can use, I guess. But I think it's a poor example, like we said at the opening, of an interaction where a firearm was used on someone who was in an emotionally disturbed state and a mental health crisis to try and use this to expedite the Department of Community Safety that you can't even, at this point, which is a year in the making, you can't articulate what they would have done and how they would have done it. And I'm being texted about the novel, and I'll read that in a second. But, you know, I did get a text. Some people can't comment. Active members of the service or whatnot that sometimes text us during the show because they don't want their name to come up in the chat. And it was a little earlier. You know, what happens when the social worker gets in trouble inside, even if the NYPD is outside? So what she's talking about is you know, like your co-response, right? Oh, the cops are going to wait a block away.
Yeah.
A block or two away, and the social workers are going to go in. Well, first of all, they don't have direct communication, right? Are they going to have police radios that they can call for an 85 and call for help? And what are they going to do? They're going to scream into the radio. It's going to be unintelligible. You're not going to understand what's going on. And like I said, they don't have the training to tactically retreat in a situation like that. Had the same scenario. And again, is it possible that the officer's uniform triggered this individual? Yes, it's possible. 100%. I'm not taking that out of the equation. However, anybody could have triggered him. So who's to say the social workers that come in wearing whatever garb they're going to be wearing to identify themselves as city employees wouldn't have triggered him just as much? And how they would have reacted is an unknown factor because they don't have the training. They don't have the experience and the wherewithal. So what would happen? Unfortunately, like a lot of people in the chat have said, like we've said, you've said, John, Eric, Marlon, Tommy and Pete will say the same thing. Sal, everybody, that we're going to have tragedies. We're going to have social workers that are going to get hurt, without a doubt. And they don't have the ability to defend themselves. and the capability to defend themselves. They don't have the tools to defend themselves if need be.
Yeah, I don't see them being, deployed immediately. They're going to need a lot of training. They're going to have to know how to respond. They're going to have to know what they have to do once they're inside the house. They're going to have to know how their summons assistance to the police, like Marlon asks right there, which radio frequency will they be using? Are they going to be on their own catered frequency? Is it going to have to be relayed? Are they capable of requesting emergency help? Are they able to tell that, oh, this is a social worker 123, and I need assistance right away? And is there somebody going to be able to track them where they are? I also question their response. Or how are they going to respond? Are they responding to lights and sirens? This individual is throwing glass, right? Yeah, the wall. Basically, what the mother had said. So, does it require an immediate response? How long is the social worker going to take there? And the biggest problem I also have is they're not going to work midnights. So I'm sorry, an EDP over the midnights. I've had a few when I've had the duties. They get a little more violent, and police response is
right when the moon's out. It's a
full
legitimate chemical balance change when you have the moon is out as opposed to the sun.
Yeah, and
that's what controls the tides, right? It also controls emotions.
That's it. And resources are a little thin, right? The midnight is a little thinner. So we're talking about so they don't respond. So what are they going to tell EDP when they call up at 12:30 a.m. 00:30 hours? They're going to call up and say, I need I'm emotionally disturbed and I need help. All right, well, can you call back at 8 o'clock? Because we don't have anybody working right now. So I can only send social workers at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I mean, come on. This is a lot of BS. It's just you're really putting these people in harm's way. That's what it is. You're going to and I don't see any social worker even wanting to do this without the police response. Okay, we had the co-response team. It came underneath the Special Operations Division when I was there, but those officers and the social workers only responded as follow-up calls. They did not respond to 911 calls, and there was a reason. There was two civilians in the car with them, or one civilian sometimes. So you're not going to respond there with civilians and then have to worry. You have to worry about yourself and your partner. Bad enough. Now you got to worry about yourself and a partner and a civilian social worker who has no idea how to respond with police and where to go. Are they going to know where to seek cover? Are they going to know where the difference between cover and concealment? Are they going to know all these things? Is that going to be the training? I highly doubt it. I mean, we don't train the police officers enough. So all you're doing is you're putting these people in. There was a social worker in Westchester County and I've said it before, that she went on a call, not a 911 call, but went on a follow-up call. She knocked on the wrong door, and another EDP jumped out and stabbed her to death. So, I mean, obviously, this is not. I mean, let's look at it from a perspective of safety. This is not safe. He talks about Department of Community Safety. This is not being safe, not at all.
No, I agree with you 100%. And somebody had asked, I'm trying to get past it because I'm a little behind. Will they be wearing body-worn cameras?
Man,
I doubt it. Right? They're social workers, so they're going to say that they're dealing with them in a mental capacity, in a medical capacity. So they're going to go with the HIPAA, right? They're going to say it's a HIPAA violation, even though we wear them, and things will be redacted, right? You turn them off if it's domestic, type of thing. You have those rules, right? So,
but don't forget, we also didn't we get a percentage raise for wearing them? I think it was a 2% raise 2%. To wear them too. So is the social workers going to want some extra money if they have to wear them too? Who knows? And right, I agree. What ballistic protection, right? Talk about the ballistic clipboard or whatever. I mean, there's all these other things, that don't really, they're not really going to have. It's a setup for disaster.
Diecast 516, thank you. Chris here would love to work for you bosses.
So, I
Thank
mean-
you. And then we'll go back to Modern
Thank
Samurai.
you, Chris. Love to have you.
Yeah, the officers should have challenged him to a duel while saying, "My name is Inigo Montoya. You cut my overtime." He's talking to you. Prepare to be apprehended. A good shoot, in my opinion. Great discussion, gents. And for those who don't know, it's a Spanish swordman from The Princess Bride. So thank you, Modern Samurai. We appreciate your support always. And I appreciate the super chat.
Look at Nike Head 27 at the 18:31 hours. That is hilarious.
All right, give
That's
me
what
one
happens
second. I don't want to bypass other people. So
He says, what happens when the elevators don't work in housing? The social workers are going to hump it up the 13 floors? Yeah, I don't think so.
right, they're going to be like, "Yeah, we couldn't gain access. Call the police." You know. Marlon saying what radio frequency? I think you mentioned that already. Marlon's thanking everybody. We appreciate it. So yeah, so people keep talking about, oh, you can't even answer questions. If they have training, Marlon, if they have training to do all that, they would literally be police department with a 6-month academy of their own. Yeah, I mean, exactly. They're not going to be working holidays, Christmas as well. Right? Christmas, Thanksgiving, big family domestic problems, big EDP days. QC Beast, social worker not available. That's a play on housing not available. Right?
Housing, highway.
Yeah, highway not available. Again, they're going to want you to be there. It's going to be, like he says, a co-response unit, which you said didn't work. It was a failed thing. So where was that? What was it? 19 what? 18 what?
I read it out, so it's all right. You can go on if you want. But
All right, so let's get to the
co-response did work, but it didn't work as a response, active 911 call. It acts as a follow-up, but it has to work together. It's a co-response. They're responding as a follow-up to the EDP call and try to de-escalate additional calls and everything else. But it doesn't work when you're sending social workers first. That's when it doesn't work.
Simply E. To that point, I did.
Where'd he go? He just left. Oh my God. Jeez.
I got my water. I had it left. I had someone leave it outside the door for me. I forgot to bring water up before. So he's saying have Tish do slave water.
Well, as somebody said earlier today, Tish didn't ask. She demanded.
Yeah. I texted my wife to please bring it up and leave it outside the door. Can't demand from my wife. We know better than that.
No,
all right, so
let's
let what people are talking about in the chat is, and what I mentioned to a little bit is he's at a press conference and he's asked by Marsha Kramer a question to clarify, because he's saying how he wants to push forward the Department of Community Safety on the heels of this event. So let's take a quick look at the video. And I was waiting for the video to go grab my water, but since simply put that out there, I figured I'd play along with it. But let's just listen to it and listen to his non-response.
Can I get a clarification about something, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. So let's make it really quick, and then we do have to go.
I really need to have a clarification
Please.
about this. I know that you talk about the fact that the police can respond in these instances if there's a weapon. But in this case, there wasn't a knowledge that there would be a weapon. There was, the charges were that he was breaking glass. And at the last minute when the cops came in, he pulled a knife out in the kitchen. So how do you determine when the police can arrive if the initial call doesn't say he's got a gun, he's got a knife? What do you do? And then if it turns violent, if a person's there without the ability to stop him, what happens?
So I think there's a few things to say here. One is a lot of this
is exactly the focus of the conversations that we're having internally in developing out this Department of Community Safety. Additionally, I want to make clear that a person experiencing a mental health episode does not always have to be served first or exclusively by a police officer. It is important for us to have all of the options available, and that's exactly what we're looking at.
I don't know. Serious liability here.
You're always going to have the accessibility to weapons. They may not have a weapon. He didn't have a weapon. Like Marshall Kramer said, the call didn't come over that he had a weapon, right? Specifically said he didn't have a weapon, right? And as soon as the cop walked through the door, he had that butcher block knife in his hand. So I don't understand it. I think, the long and the short of it is that these cops did a great job, that they should be commended for it. We commend them. We think, we've been critical in the past, so don't, I didn't see any comments about it, but a lot of times we'll get pushback that, oh, you guys never say anything negative about the cops and blah, blah. And that's not true. We have been critical of some use of tactics. We have been critical of firearms discharges. We've talked recently about firearms discharges that we felt, we didn't like the way that they went down. We didn't like the use of force. However, they were legally justified. So it's not that we're not critical. We're going to give our perspective. We're going to give our opinions on things. And here, I definitely say, and I like to be positive, don't get me wrong. We'll talk about the negative. We'll bring up the negative. We'll highlight shortcomings, not to embarrass anyone, but to try to help other officers like Officer White, who, again, I'll say it again, in the beginning of that job said, since I've been watching videos, I don't stand in front of the door. So social media, again, I'm not taking credit for it, but social media has given him more awareness than his training that he got from the NYPD. You have any final thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, so I'll say that, he talks about not standing in front of the door. The terminology is the fatal funnel, right? If you stand in front of the door, a bullet can come through that door at any given time, and it could kill you. You can also, stand to the side. You have a little bit more reaction time. So absolutely, I'm 100% behind, Police Officer White. I think he did a great job. He protected himself. He protected his partner. He did what he had to do in the time and availability of area that he had. So he really did a great job. When you talk about being critical of shootings, I was critical of the sergeant shooting the little unarmed raccoon, because I felt that the officers should have probably if discharged him if that was a threat. So I had a problem with the supervisor, actually, discharging the weapon. So I am critical of shootings. I like to look at these shootings from the perspective of maybe being the duty captain, the duty inspector, the duty chief, and say, how would I have written that 49, which is a report of the shooting? Or I know Firearms Investigation Division does that now, but how would I have investigated that on the times when I did? And how would I have judged that call? And to me, this was a justifiable shooting. The officer did a great job. He tried to close the door. He tried to distance himself. He tried to take time. He tried to do everything that he could do
Loud,
in that
clear,
small little
concise
area, confined space. The partner right behind him. That job should be one of the training videos that they put out and say, this is what you can do. Although the outcome, nobody wants the outcome of a person shot, but what the officer did, his actions were, as we would always say, spot on, and he did a great job. I mean, I cannot be critical at all of what he did.
We're going to give Officer White the spot on award for the show.
He gets it.
You're not getting it this week, Rob. You're not getting it this week.
Listen, if Officer White gets it, then I'm happy he got it. I'd much rather give it up to him. So absolutely.
people don't realize that the tens or hundreds of thousands of police officers throughout the country, it's such a minute percentage that ever fire their firearm in an adversarial manner in their entire career. So Michael M. As a comment, Rob, going back to your stats on EDP runs, in most instances, it's the first two officers on the scene that successfully resolve these calls. Firm professionalism, kindness and compassion, force only when last resort. A testament to the great job we do. Michael M., you're spot on.
Spot on. 1,000% right there.
You know, and then Amazing Nance, spot on also. Served by PD to ensure safety first. Let me just get through any of these little comments first before I hate going back to comments after we move on to the next topic. You know, again, we talked about this, right? Anytime there's a kitchen scene, it's access to a weapon. You know? Even that closed door, he wouldn't have had a duty to engage the EDP shortly thereafter. Even closing that door, he wouldn't have. I'm not sure. Am I reading that wrong?
I'm not sure. I don't know what. No, maybe Crow Eater could explain it a little better. He says even closing that door, he wouldn't have had the duty to engage EDP. If he did close the door, I mean, you basically, you know, developed a barricaded EDP with a hostage now. But yeah, at that point, you're gonna have ESU, H&T, and Taru respond. So
there you go. 92 Charlie's thanking God you're the duty chief tonight.
Thank you, 92 Charlie. Appreciate that, brother.
RM 161 RM. I think this is the first time I'm seeing you in the chat. It's a fantastic show. Thank you. Appreciate the support. Appreciate you joining. So you know, let's hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Get the algorithm going. You know, we really appreciate everything that everybody's doing. Oh, I hit the wrong button. So we really appreciate the support. And if I can get the right, oh, I see what I did. All right, I'll fix that. So thank you. We appreciate it. Let's move on. So you talked about it in the very beginning of the show. And we've had quite the cold front that's come through New York. 11 straight days, I think the mayor had said, of sub 32 degree weather out there, code blue. When code blue is in effect, if someone doesn't have the appropriate shelter they're supposed to be taking in, they expand the shelter system so that no one gets turned away, even if it gets a little overcrowded. You know, and so there's a lot that's going on. As you can see here, it was reported that there's 16 deaths, 13 from hypothermia. That's one of the statements. I'm going to show a video of a press conference that the mayor gave. Since then, there's been one additional death, but they haven't determined whether it was from hypothermia or from an overdose, because what they're saying is it was 13 from hypothermia and 3 were overdose deaths. But you know, it's just it's really rough what's going on, and you want to touch on that, or you want to go to the video?
No, I just think it's a sad state when you have a large amount of people dying out on the street. You know, and we talked about when we had Curtis Leewell on, right? He talked about his engagement and how he's going to expand and help the homeless. And right now, I don't think anything's being done. So, I mean, it's very sad that you see homeless people out there, some of which are veterans. You know, we've come across. I mean, it's very sad to see that, and to allow these individuals to be out on the street and die like this. It's extremely disheartening.
Yeah, well, without a doubt. I lost my screen for a second. Sorry. There you go. You're back. Yeah, it's very disheartening, and it's, one of the things that Mayor Mamdani stopped doing the day he got in office. We talked about it. It was one of the first executive orders, was that he did away with the policy of the city and the NYPD and the other city services of going out and cleaning up these homeless encampments. Now he's claiming that none of these deaths were involved with an encampment. So is that better or worse? That means that there's people out there that don't even have makeshift shelter, and they're not getting the proper services, and they're not being taken off the street, because he is not a believer that people should be involuntarily taken off the street just because they're homeless. They're not being taken off because they're homeless. They're being taken off the street because it's a deadly situation, as we can see. So
I mean, how does he know that they weren't from an encampment? In other words, they don't have to live in their, in their encampment. I've seen homeless people from encampments that go out. They sometimes they look for cans. They sometimes they'll beg or whatever, but they don't always stay there. So if somebody came out in that freezing cold weather and then froze to death somewhere else, does that mean they weren't from an encampment? I mean, where were they from? So I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess what he's saying is, when you have those encampments and you have those, makeshift shelters that the homeless make, that they haven't found anybody dead inside there yet.
In there, but doesn't mean that the person that died weren't from there.
Right. And they just weren't in their shelter. They became incapacitated
Somewhere else, right?
They're outside in the cold, so your body, everything slows down, everything comes, and then you lose your mental capacity, and that's when you wind up freezing. Your heart rate slows, your breathing slows, and to the point where you're just out there, and it's just too much. So
TC makes an hilarious comment there. He says he checked their ID and it was different from their address.
one thing I find funny. I'm gonna make a note on it. There's one thing I want to comment that's kind of I found was like, one of those moments during this press conference that I'm going to put up. So I'm going to put the press conference up. I want you to watch. He's up there. He's with one of his new commissioners. I forget her name. She speaks with Manhattan Borough President Brad Holman Siegel, and Controller Mark Levine is up there with the public advocate Jumaane Williams. And they're at this press conference, and it's they're talking about opening up one of the observation decks at one of the city buildings, but he's addressing the cold weather emergency at the time. So let's take a look at that, and then I just want you to watch the borough president, when you're looking at the screen on the right, and Jumaane Williams, who's standing in the back, and how they're dealing with the cold weather.
Good morning. I want to begin with just a few words about the winter weather that continues to linger across our city. First, city workers continue their remarkable efforts to lift millions of tons of snow off of city streets. DSNY workers have worked relentlessly to melt over 122 million pounds of snow and to lay more than 209 million pounds of salt across New York. As of 8 a.m. this morning, workers have cleared 44,646 crosswalks, 16,532 bus stops, and 9,764 fire hydrants. A severe cold front continues to bear down on our city. Today is our 11th consecutive day of below freezing weather, and we could very well be in the middle of the longest period of consecutive sub-32 degree weather in our city's entire history. Without temperatures rising above freezing, snow has hardened into blocks of ice. But the greatest danger posed by this sustained cold is to vulnerable New Yorkers who remain exposed to the elements. As of this morning, 16 of our fellow New Yorkers have passed away outside during this brutal stretch of cold. In 13 of these cases, preliminary findings indicate that hypothermia played a role, and 3 of these deaths appear to be overdose deaths. We await final results from the medical examiner's office and will inform New Yorkers as we learn more. Each of these lives lost is a tragedy. My heart was with the family of those mourning their loved ones. We are continuing to do everything in our power to get every New Yorker into a shelter where they will be warm. The cold is showing no signs of stopping, so neither will this city's efforts. From information available now, it appears that none of the individuals who have died outside were living in homeless encampments at the time of their death. New York remains in a code blue. If you see someone in need, please call 311. Outreach workers and first responders from the NYPD and FDNY will respond and get those New Yorkers the help that they need. Our outreach workers have only intensified their work to get homeless New Yorkers into shelter. We continue to operate warming sites and warming vehicles across the 5 boroughs. We have expanded shelter capacity, relaxed intake rules, and are working with our partners across the city to increase outreach. As of this morning, we have made more than 930 placements to shelters and safe havens. We have also involuntarily transported 18 New Yorkers who were determined to be a danger to themselves or to others. We have expanded our mobile warming units to a fleet of 20, which are moving throughout the city, equipped with clinical staff to treat New Yorkers' needs and get them off the street. If you are hearing me speak right now and you are not sure if you will be looked after, please let me make myself clear. Every single person will be cared for. No one will be turned away. As part of that commitment, we have added 50 new single-room shelter units for those who are uncomfortable with other forms of shelter, because we want every New Yorker to know that shelter is there if they need it.
If you see me now and think that you're not going to get the services, who are you talking to? Do you think the homeless people are watching your press conference? This guy is out of touch. Out of touch. So, you see, they're not handling the cold very well. And, you know, he's just...
He didn't, wait, where was his Carhartt jacket that he got? His new embroidered Carhartt jacket. He was afraid to wear that there?
You know, everybody's making a big deal about that, and it was the front page of the Post today. But I'm thinking back, right?
That's an expensive jacket.
Yeah, but in all honesty, I think back to all the previous mayors, and when they're out there doing something with sanitation, they always wear a sanitation jacket. When they wear something with the police department, they try to put some kind of police garb on. Fire department, they kind of put a fire or something. I've seen it in the past, and we're kind of breaking the guy's horns about wearing, a sanitation jacket that said mayor on the sleeve. I don't have that much of a big deal. Now, I don't know how expensive the jacket was, if it's, whatever. I mean, listen, all of Kaz's embroidery was, obviously excessive, and, that's a different story.
He's starting to do the same.
Yeah. But I just think, to be honest, I think that,
I just think I think the timing is bad. Okay, you're in the process of getting a Carhartt jacket. I don't know. I have Carhartt pants when I do work outside. They're very, very warm. They're really warm. They have a very good for doing like construction work or doing like work around the house. So when you're talking about 16 people, possibly 17 now, dying because of exposure to cold, 13 or 3, whatever, but when you talk about people that are dying of cold exposure and you're out there purchasing a Carhartt jacket to make sure that you're warm, I don't know. I just think perception, it takes a different level right there. And I just don't think it was the right thing to do. I think he has to think about what the actions that he does, just like police officers. When you see police officers doing certain things, they're under a scrutiny all the time, right? So they watch it. They watch how you react. How many times do people try to bait officers lately? Give me a business card, give me this, give me that, all that BS, right? And the officer has to maintain his composure. So he's the mayor. He's the city of New York. Let's show a little bit of compassion. Let's show a little bit of understanding. I think it's just I don't have a problem with him getting a jacket. Yeah, you want to keep warm, keep warm. You're going to be on New Year's Eve. You're going to, be on the top of, where the ball drops. All well and good, but I just think you got to think about perception. And right there, the perception is that, hey, the mayor is staying warm. He's got a really nice jacket, but our homeless are dying on the street. But they can go to a shelter if they can listen to my video on Facebook or whatever, because we know, like you said, all the homeless are watching, they all have iPhones and they're watching their favorite podcasts and everything else. So I don't know.
But the homeless aren't. So, but he's talking to them directly.
That's what he's telling them, though. Yeah.
I just found that interesting. Shout out, Andy. How are you? Glad. Thanks for the support. I don't know. But I just think it's funny because they're up there and, the police are expected to be out on foot posts, right? The whole thing about pulling the mobile field forces and putting it back out there. I think LePetri did the right thing by making that call. Then he was basically told you don't have that authority as the highest ranking uniformed member of the service. I think you do, but that's another show in itself that's been covered and it's ridiculous. Eric and John spoke about it. Eric had statistics and I wanted to get them, but we just had all this other stuff to talk about, about the time it takes for frostbite to start, attacking your skin and everything else. And, the ability for police to keep themselves warm. You have to not just keep yourself warm. You can't have a Carhartt jacket, right? You have to wear the uniform jacket, right? Or is that what the name is called? Carhartt? Was it?
Carhartt, yeah.
Yeah. So, you can't wear that jacket, right? You can wear something underneath, but you can't bulk up too much because then you lose your ability to move, right? You can't
like
wear
the Michelin Man.
right. You can't wear certain gloves. You have to wear gloves that give you dexterity and the ability to handle and properly discharge your firearm. So you need room for your finger to be able to get into the trigger without having an accidental discharge because you're jamming it in there. Because if you're wearing too thick of gloves, right, you don't have that ability. You can wear the balaclava, whatever it's called, the baklava, whatever the hell it's called, and that covers you up here. You have to be able to see. You have to be able to hear. You can't put earmuffs on. You can wear the furry hat with the flips down. Is that even still a thing? I don't even know. I haven't seen anybody wearing that in recent pictures because they all wear the knit hat now, right?
Oh, the bombardier hat?
The bombardier hat, right? But I don't see that anymore because everybody wears the knit hats that came out under O'Neill. But it's unfair to expect anyone, traffic agents, police officers, any other first responders to be out in this weather for any extended period of time. It's a code blue for a reason, right? To take people off the streets because it's a hazard to your health, right? And they'll stand there and they'll dictate this and everything else, but yet they can't stand for a 15-minute press conference. Jumaane Williams, the others get up and they speak. They say a few words. They get down. Jumaane Williams gets up there. He speaks. He stops halfway through his speech and says, I'm not going to read the rest of this because it's too damn cold, right? So I'm going to play a snippet that I put together of when Jumaane Williams comes up, and then it cuts to after he speaks and the borough president speaks, well, I think the borough president spoke first, whatever. When the mayor takes his first question at the press conference, right? So let's look at what that looks like. And then I have some comments after that too.
Public advocate Jumaane Williams.
I'm going to back it up a second because I want you to hear what he says.
And now the warmest man on this stage, public advocate Jumaane Williams.
This is cursing weather, for sure. Peace and blessing, love and light to everybody. Woo!
A few moments later.
Mayor,
How's it going?
I want to ask you a question.
You look warm.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
See, that's
You
my
look
point.
warm. Where are these guys going? Hey, come on. Hey. Get out. Okay. That's good. Get out of here. All right. Okay. I guess a few people will pay to come up and see this viewing site. All right. It's just me and my commissioner.
I work for you, so.
Yeah.
Sorry, my camera went out.
Yeah, where'd you go there?
Yeah, I don't know. My camera went out. I gotta refocus it. But you see how they just left. He gets up there. He talks about how cold it is. It's cursing weather. Woo! Right? Says a few words. Goes back, and then the mayor starts taking questions, and they just walk away. Like, I'm sorry. Excuse me. He's the mayor of the city of New York. You're at a press conference with him. And the three of you just walk away. And he's standing there laughing, giddy like a school kid. Because he doesn't, a lot of people say it's his first real job, right? He was a state assemblyman, but, he didn't have a lot of exposure, I guess, with public speaking and everything else. Even though he's very dynamic with his speaking and very engaging, I was blown away that they just walked away from the press conference while he was taking questions. And what if the reporters had questions for them? They just no respect for the mayor of the city of New York. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I just want to address a comment there because Patrick Donahue says it's a balaclava. So I think I might have messed it up. I think you messed it up, but yeah.
Oh, I definitely messed it up. I've never gotten that right.
No, I don't think I have either. I don't know if I ever had one either, but that was it. And then I just want to, I love what 92 Charlie had mentioned earlier, that the Carhartt used to be the anti-crime jacket of the early days. And I remember it was also, you remember the old army jackets?
Yeah.
That was the other one. And then during the summer, it was the football jersey or the baseball jersey, right? So you could cover your gun belt. But yeah, no. So you have the mayor of the city of New York, and you have people that basically work under him, and they just kind of walk away. Could you imagine if somebody did that to Jessica Tisch? Could you imagine that when she needed that water, that Mike LePetri just walked off the podium and said, "I gotta go"? I don't think so. I think it's a total sign of disrespect. I understand it's cold, but you made a good point earlier. What about our poor police officers that are out there in the mobile field forces? And as far as the mobile field forces go, I hope that every supervisor out there, lieutenant, sergeant, captain, whoever is on that detail, let those officers stay in the vans, let them stay in their cars, and didn't put them out on the streets. Okay. And if they had a foot post and they brought a car to the mobile field force, take your car out to the foot post. I had a great sergeant in my NSU field training unit. He actually told us it was raining. It was winter, raining, cold. It was terrible, right? So a good cop never gets wet, cold, or hungry. And what did he do, the sergeant? He says, guys, at 1900 hours, which is 7 p.m. in civilian time, I'm going to come by your foot post to give you a scratch. Have a good night. And that was great, because then what we do, we knew we could stay in a building, we could go into the subway stations, we could keep warm, we could keep dry, so that if we needed to respond to anything, we were ready to respond. We were still out there. We were just not on the particular post. But you know what? At 1855, we were out there. Sergeant came by in 1900, gave us our scratch, and went 98, and then we went back to what we had to do to keep our warmth. But for the borough president and for Jumaane Williams to say, hey, F this, I'm walking off stage, that's bizarro world. How do you do that? That's insanity. That's total disrespect to the mayor. It's a total disrespect to the news media, who may, like you said, may have asked a question. You just don't do that. It's just that, hey, how long you have to be on the cold? for a few more minutes, or you whisper in the mayor's ear, "Hey, mayor, let's end this. We want to go in." But he walks off the stage first, not the other way around. So I'm sorry. That was horrifying. So
Totally disrespectful. And I got a text, from one of the listeners. Mamdani handled it well, actually. What was he supposed to say? They may have paid for it later. Yeah, true. What was he supposed to do? I mean, I don't know about the whole.
It's the only way he could have handled it, though.
Right. I mean, the whole laughter thing. I mean, it's nervous laughter, right? Because he's got to be saying to himself, "Holy shit, these people are walking away from me," and again, he's the youngest guy standing there, right? But he's the mayor of the city of New York. He is the one that the people chose. He's the one. The female commissioner, she stood there and he said, "It's just me and my commissioner." And she's like, "I work for you." And that's the right answer. She did the right thing. She didn't follow suit and walk off. She's looking at them like, "Where the hell are you going?" And listen, and I remember too, used to go those cold days where you were hiding and off your post, trying to keep warm, and then you have those bosses that come up and try to feel your shield. One time I came out, I was on a foot post on Flatbush Avenue, and there was a Wendy's that had a second floor, right? So you used to be able to go upstairs.
That's where you could eat up there, right?
You can go upstairs, you eat, you're away from everybody, but you can also look out the window and see the boss pulling up. Then you come on down, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I was just going to the bathroom." Well, I got busted because I used that excuse. "Oh yeah, boss, I was just going to the bathroom." And he goes, "Then why is your shield frosting over?" Because my shield was so warm from being inside for the last half hour. I walk outside and it's blistering cold, and my shield frosts over. I go, when I took my jacket off to go to the bathroom, I put it on the heater, to warm it up a little bit. So when I came back out, he just looked at me like, "You're full of shit, and don't think I don't know."
Yeah, you gave him an answer though, right?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
I tell you,
the good thing about that is you remember it. If you're a decent boss, you remember that when you move up. Like, you remember what it was like to stand out there and not feel your toes and not feel your fingers and have, I think Eric brought it up, and have your pen freeze that you can't even write in your memo book that you're doing a 62p, a personal, because the ink in your pen is frozen. That's how cold it is outside, and you're so cold. And we had those gray gloves back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Remember the gray gloves? They weren't warm. They didn't keep your hands warm, and you can't stand there with your hands in your pockets. It's a tactical disadvantage. It's tough. It's tough. But yeah, for the homeless people out there, and it was one of the things that you sent me. Somebody put a tweet out. Oh, hold on. I gotta take that.
Also a good boss wouldn't ask you, "Why is your shield frosting over?" A good boss would have said, "Let me scratch you. All right, have a good night, Ron. I'll talk to you later." Because you know what? That boss is sitting in the car with the heater going. You know what? So
or say, make sure you're whacking it up. Make sure you're not in all night.
Absolutely.
Make sure you're out here. Make sure you get a little something to prove you're out here. Back in our day when we were cops, they would tell you got to get 25. It was one book. The book was everything, right? It was A's, B's, and C's. Movers, parkers, and criminal court summonses were all one summons. It's which part you snapped out, for your summonses. And just listen, that's your way of proving that you were out on post tonight, by coming in with a couple of summonses, and just make sure you're not in all night.
Yeah.
That's the right way to do it.
I remember one time when I was in NSU, we were in the 4-6 and it was snowing. So the whole night we kind of stayed inside, right? We were doing verticals, we were doing subway checks. And then at the end of the night, we couldn't get it because the roads were slippery. We couldn't get anybody to come pick us up. So we walked all the way back from the 4-6 to the 5-2. And when we came in, we were full of snow. And I remember the desk sergeant go, "That's exactly what a foot post is supposed to look like." And I was laughing at myself. I said, "Yeah, all right. That's only because we walked in." It's not because we were out there all night, but yeah, you bet, boss.
Right.
So-
Yeah. It's just snowing so bad that, you know,
Exactly.
yeah.
But yeah, you have that the picture of those homeless, that poor homeless guy, right?
Yeah. So a tweet comes out, right? Breaking news, shocking footage of Zohran Mamdani's New York City, captured by New York Scoop, is going viral, showing a homeless man, right, sitting over a manhole for warmth as snow and garbage line the streets while 16 people have already died from the cold. And for those who don't live in New York City, haven't spent time in New York City, in the winter, you will see homeless people sleeping over the transit grates because of the heat that comes up from underground from the transit system. But this person is over on, I think it was 10th Avenue.
You saw in the news earlier they said they found 3 bodies. Yeah. It's so sad. And let me tell you, talk about he's young. Look like, right? Looks another 42.
So, I mean, you get it. I mean, the guy's standing there and he's got a blanket over him and he's just trying to encapsulate the heat that's coming up from that manhole cover. You know, it's just, you know, somebody like that needs help. That person needs to be taken off the street. That person doesn't have adequate shelter. He's standing in the middle of an active street and trying to stay warm. He obviously doesn't have adequate clothing, doesn't have some type of shelter that he's standing there and he's getting that.
Yeah, no, that's very sad because you figure the only heat that he's got right there is coming up from that grate or sewer system. So, and you talk about all these people that go past him, right? Did anybody make a 911 call to get this person off the street? And there's also a traffic vehicle over there. So is somebody in that traffic vehicle? Did somebody call and help this individual? I mean, this is the reason why people are freezing out there. If people aren't out there, we talked about in previous episodes, the homeless outreach, and that's a big, Curtis was a big advocate of it and still does it now to this day. He goes out there with the members from the Guardians to go out there. So I don't know, just to see that is really bad. And that's just one example, right? How many other ones are there? And I can remember around Madison Square Garden, a lot of homeless would lay, they'd get kicked out of Penn Station. And what they do, they go upside and then they lay on a piece of cardboard over the subway grates to keep the warmth, So terrible situation. And they need help. I mean, it's not fair. And I've said it in the past, they need a safe place to go. Some of these shelters are not safe.
No.
They get assaulted, they get robbed. I mean, it's terrible. So
Urban Infidel is saying it here. It's seen a lot of homeless people in the subways lately. Absolutely. Whenever you have a cold weather emergency like this, they go downstairs. They go down into the transit. Transit system gets inundated. Pat's giving up. Used to hide the shield outside the TA room so that a jerk off boss who touched your shield on a scratch wouldn't know you were inside the room for hours. Yeah, there's all different types of ways of doing it. Some people used to keep their shield in a cup of ice. So when it came out, there's different things.
I don't think I ever tried to touch anybody's shield. I mean,
never.
Do you remember when you weren't allowed, on roll call, you weren't allowed to touch somebody's vest? Somebody got in trouble for doing that, and they had to ask the officer to pat. You have a vest on. They pat the vest. I would never touch somebody's shield to see if you're in or out. Hey, the guy's there, and the girl's there. You giving them a scratch. All right, have a safe night. Be careful out here, and that's it. I mean, that's not being a good boss if you're touching people's shield to see where you were. All right, that's you. Somebody's looking for stupid shit right there.
It's funny you say that, right? So one of my pet peeves, as silly as it is, I used to hate the crew neck white T-shirt on the blue shirt. Well, buy a friggin' V-neck T-shirt. I used to just hate that. It's just
That's
it's just
LAPD.
annoying.
LAPD wear that.
Yeah.
LAPD.
Right. But that's not the way we were, right? So I used to bother me, right? So one time as a joke, and I bring this up because what you said, we used to go around and tap them to make sure they were wearing a vest. And then like you said, they changed the order because somebody complained they were assaulted, right? That they had to demonstrate. They had to demonstrate, right? I used to have a senior cop that used to put newspapers for roll call and then take them out because he didn't want to wear his vest.
Yeah.
So I used to grab him out of the job and go, Harvey, you wearing your vest? Let me see you wear your vest. Oh, when I went in to go to the bathroom, I left it. Yeah, okay, guy. 10-2, get back there. That's a safety issue to me. That's not a personal choice, and that's not breaking somebody's chops for not having a pen or white socks or anything like that. But the T-shirt used to bug me, right? So one time as a joke, I had somebody cut the back of their shirt at roll call and go up to them and break the chop and go, I can't believe I can't stand, and grab the T-shirt and ripped it off and ripped it out from under his shirt because it was, it was set up. He was cut from behind. Everyone was like, freaking out. Meanwhile, I was all set up.
Yeah.
We, used to have some fun, but get your point across, but have some fun. But listen, it's sad, and I think that's more of an issue. You touched on. You said the shelter system is not a safe system, and that's 100% true. We used to lock people up, and they go, I'd rather go to the tombs. I'd rather go down to the tombs, which they used to call the cells, at court for the night. It's safer than going to the shelters. And that's a sad state of affairs. So the emphasis really needs to be to try and rehabilitate the shelter systems, make it a safer system, make it so that it's a safe space and they don't have to worry about being robbed, assaulted, sexually assaulted, whatever the case may be, that puts these people in fear that they'd rather go to jail for the night than go to a shelter. It's a terrible thing. And, permanent housing, listen, you're not taking somebody off the street and put them in permanent housing. It's got to be incremental. You got to get into the shelter system. You got to get them established. You have to work with them so they understand. Some people don't know how to maintain their own residence. There have to be some types of these quote unquote, halfway houses or assisted living or whatever the case may be. It's bad. But you have all these homeless people out there. People with mental illness, some people just don't want the help. They're not going to take your help no matter what you want, and then, Fox, I worked in the shelter system. The ones doing the raping, trafficking of drugs, sex, etc., is done by the staff, not the homeless people.
Oh my God.
There you go.
Terrible.
That's somebody from the inside telling you what's going on in the shelter system. So, and they're these shelters, the people that are running these shelters are making a lot of money. A lot of money. And now, driver's seat is saying that the shelters are overcrowded with migrants from South America and Africa in addition to our own. True to a point, but don't get me started because that's a rabbit hole at 2 hours and 14 minutes we're not going to go down on the migrant crisis and them getting hotel rooms and vouchers and money. We talked about this in the past, and it's just a sensitive point for me. So thanks for bringing it up, driver sheet. I agree with you, but, these migrants, illegal immigrants are treated better than our citizens that are homeless, our citizens that are veterans, and they're getting better treatment. They're getting better housing and better benefits.
They get phones so they can see what Mamdani says on where to go.
There you go. And that's even a true statement. And who was it that said it? Did you say it or somebody else said it? That they knew a Border Patrol agent who said, or maybe it was on the 10-4 Tavern, they might have said it, that they know Border Patrol agents, they don't confiscate those phones when they leave the country. So they
That's
get those
ridiculous.
phones, they keep them.
Yeah. No.
It's insanity. It's insanity, you know. But you know, people have been bringing it up about the snow also, and there was a viral video that Michael Rappaport, who's an actor and an activist, not a fan of Zoran Mamdani, put out about the snow. And so I'm going to throw that up, and then I'll get your take on it, because I think I might have a different take.
Look at this. This poor bastard ain't getting out until the spring. Look at this dirt a week after the snowstorm. Look at this dirty hole. Look at this. I don't know what this guy's gonna do. This guy, call your insurance company. Look at this dirt. Where's the mayor to clean this up? They got garbage everywhere, dirty snow. What do you do with this? Where's your shovel now, Mamdani? Look at this. You know how many people fall, break their ankles? Look at this. This is New York. Start spreading the news. And this is on the Upper East Side. 3 minutes from where the mayor lives. Look at this guy. Look at this. Look at this. This guy's never getting. Look at this. Look at this. It's the reality of New York City. 1 month. Where's the salt? Where's the shovels? Where's the plows? Bullshit, fake. Look at this. Look at this. This is a great luck for New York. Look at it. This guy's never getting out. His car's destroyed. This poor bastard with his motor scooter.
I think he's hysterical. Okay, yeah, give me your take on that.
Okay. So having lived in New York City in the Bronx, that's pretty much the same I've always seen. I can remember digging my car out. I can remember maybe putting a garbage pail there in hopes that the person that came home didn't remove the garbage pail and I was able to get the same spot. But, you know, that rarely happened. That happens to me all the time. The problem I have are the sidewalks and crosswalks and fire hydrants cleared. That's where I have the problem, because years ago they used to, and they still do it. They hire civilians during big snowstorms to do that. And I think they pay like $19 an hour right now. And then if you work more than 40 hours, you get an increase. And they used to go out and you'd see them all the time shoveling the crosswalks, the bus stops, the fire hydrants. So I don't know if that was done immediately. I don't think maybe Mamdani even knew that he was supposed to do it. I don't think the Department of Sanitation actually, I think the storm came on the 26th of January or thereabouts, and they didn't deploy these people till around February 2nd or so. So that I don't understand. That should have been done immediately. You know, that's a safety hazard. As far as the vehicles, hey, that happens all the time, you know, and usually what happens is eventually they reinstate alternate side parking and people dig themselves out, and then a plow comes by and they take care of the cars and take all the snow there. You know, they have been melting snow. So I don't know if I necessarily agree wholeheartedly. I saw there's a big garbage pile up. If you look in the back of that picture, you know, that happens also because the sanitation guys all do snow removal. So you do have a big buildup of garbage. You know, that leads to rats and everything else. But that I don't know necessarily if this is in fact as bad as he's making it out to be. I've tried to dig out sometimes, and that's why alternate side is usually suspended, because that means you can't get your car out. And I can remember trying to dig. I can remember the idiots that would go down to the local grocery store and buy the plastic shovels, you know, because most people didn't have shovels, right? If you lived in the city, where I was in an apartment in the Bronx, we didn't have that. So you did the best you could. So I don't have a big issue with it. I do think that as far as clearing the safety features that are in the streets, the sidewalks, the fire hydrants, the bus stops, that should have been done today. Immediately thereafter the storm, right? That should have been cleared. Or they should have been hiring people to do that. And I don't know if he didn't do that right away because he was ignorant and didn't know about it, or because he was trying to save money and see what would happen if everything cleared. Somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that sometimes they treat these streets, prior to the snow removal. Actually the snowfall, with a sodium chloride, I believe it is. And that wasn't done because there was a shortage of salt or whatever. So, I don't know if the city didn't budget for enough salt, then there's a shortage of it. So, but yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? Do you have same?
Listen,
feeling?
I honestly, and I have family in the Department of Sanitation, but I'm not biased to the Department of Sanitation. I honestly think that they're doing a hell of a job. I think that, yeah, they do hire people to go out. They start hiring them as soon as the snowstorm is projected. They start hiring people and putting out the link to join up so you can get hired. But listen, those people, they're not overly supervised. They're not vetted in really any way, shape, or form, right? So you see them out there, and some of them are working hard, and some of them are standing there with a shovel making $19 an hour, and they're going tick, throwing a little bit of shovel so it looks like they're doing something. But this is New York City. It's vast. It's huge, right? Number one, we don't have a place to put the snow, so they have to pile it up in locations, and now they're coming out with these big, melting machines where they're dumping it in. And they're melting as much snow as they can melt. Now you see them a few days later. A lot of people are complaining online that they're pushing the snow into the middle of the street. Well, what they do is they plow it out into the street, and then they go over it with the salt truck to melt it, which causes in itself some troubles with manhole fires and whatnot, because the salt goes down and corrodes the wires, and then you have these explosions and burnouts of the wires. But I think they're doing a decent job. He's talking, look at this dirt. Look at this dirt. The dirt is a mixture of salt and slush and all the other crap. What do you expect? You want a street sweeper to come and clean it up? It's ridiculous. Everybody, they're doing 12-hour tours, right? Around the clock. Garbage pickup is behind. My garbage got picked up a day late. It is what it is. You see those big piles of garbage? Tell me how you expect the garbage collector, the sanitation workers, right? Called garbage man, whatever, the sanitation workers, to get to it.
If they even have the truck, right? The trucks all have plows on them.
Right. If they're not doing the snow removal and remediation, right? So even if they have trucks assigned to go out and collect garbage while they're plowing, doing double duties, right? You can't even get to it because people haven't cleared a path. Now, I make sure when I put my cans out, I look at some of my neighbors, and it's like their cans are on the sidewalk, and then there's a mound of snow. Like, do they expect the garbage man to go walk down to your driveway, walk around the drive? I expect those cans to be there tomorrow when the garbage men come and take my garbage, because where do I put mine? I put mine out. You're not supposed to put it past the curb, but I don't think I'm going to get a ticket for putting my garbage out in the street for these guys right now. So they can drive up and they can grab it. And I block my own driveway. And you know what? If they don't come by the time I have to move my car, I move my garbage cans to get out of the way. Have a little courtesy for these guys that are busting their ass. Sanitation is not an easy job. There's plenty of perks. They get paid a lot of money. They get a lot of overtime, especially when it comes to the snow. But that's a manual labor job. Why, people take people for granted and expect that, this is what I pay my taxes for. They can figure it out. No, they don't figure it out, So, yeah, I think that the sanitation is doing a good job. I've been driving all around the city since I got back from, I was in Florida when the storm hit. And, so I came home the day after the storm, and the roads were already clear. Even I live on a secondary street, right? And my street was clear. You know, I feel bad for the people that park on the right side of the street because that's the way the plows are always in. Never park on the right side of a street of a one-way street, you know, because that's the way the plows are always geared they'll plow you in on the right side. So that's my opinion. You know, yeah. Is it frustrating? It's frustrating. And also, don't forget, Mother Nature is not helping. This is one of those storms where we got hit with this storm, and then we've been in a deep freeze. So Mother Nature is not helping to melt this out. You know, where a lot of times now, then sanitation will be out at night just laying salt because it's melting into the street, and then it freezes up when it gets cold at night. It's been bitter cold and in freezing up until yesterday. Yesterday was the first day over 32 degrees where you started to get a little bit of melt. Today I was out there, you know, a little bit of melt.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know what? Doing what they can do. I mean, that's the best. That's all. What do you expect? So that happens every snowstorm. This is nothing new. Modern Samurai is saying in the chat like that happens all the time. I don't know. There's not anything out of the ordinary. I just don't know if somebody in the chat had mentioned that they actually did have people shoveling right away. So maybe they didn't get a lot of people. I mean, I don't know. Shoveling snow, $19 an hour. I don't know how much. How much you really want to do that either. So, and I mean, like you said, it's really freezing cold out there. So, but it is what it is.
Phil, I'm going to disagree with you. I think they do a good job. You know, we don't like it when the snow. Listen, I've plowed shoveled my driveway and got plowed in again. It happens. We don't have. Where are they supposed to go? They're supposed to go down the street and they're supposed to stop every time they see somebody's plowed driveway so that they don't plow it in. No, they're just going to go down the street and then you got to move it again. It sucks, And this is what you're talking about. This one here. It's not the first time we had snow in the city. They say it every time, every snowstorm. Nobody can make a plan to fix this. Please stop. I don't know. What's the answer, Samurai? What's the answer? Where in other municipalities in Canada and other states that are, that get feet and feet of snow, might have different systems and also a lot more money in the budget because they remove the snow. They have the special. I've seen it on TV. You see it on, you watch the news and you see it. They have these special plows that take, like they're big snow blowers basically, and they blow the snow right into a dump truck and then they haul it off to wherever they're going to put it. Right? We used to hit, well, here we are in today we live in, right? We used to dump the snow into the East River, right? They used to go and back up the trucks, dump the snow, push it off into the river. What did the environmentalists say? You can't do that. You're contaminating the water with the salt and the debris and the dirt from the snow. So now what do? Now we have these huge melting things that they dump the snow into and melt it into the sewer. And then it goes into our sewer system and our sewer treatment plants. But that's what we used to do, right? That was a good answer. Just dump it off into the water. Well, no, now you're contaminating the water with the calcium chloride, the rock salt, and everything else.
Well, I really don't know what the right answer is.
You were waiting for me to shut up to use that. Oh, all right. We're 2 hours and 29 minutes into it. You got anything else you want to? I had this graphic that was as of yesterday. They've melted over 122 million pounds of snow using the gargantuan hot tubs that we were talking about and scattered over 209 million pounds of salt across Gotham. As of Monday, we're at Wednesday now. And like I said, now what they're doing is they're plowing it into the middle of the street and then going over it with salt and putting a ton of salt down to melt it down. I got stuck behind one of them trucks yesterday. I had to, change my route. But so, they are doing, they're doing what they can do. If somebody has another idea,
Modern Samurai does a pretty good one too.
Where is it?
It's 1935.
I'm not making excuses, Samurai. Phil, I'm just saying that I think they're doing a decent job. What's the
1935, he's designates spots for removal, parking regulations to benefit snow removal so they can plow, just like in the cities that have heavy snowfalls. Is that Minneapolis, Wisconsin, Missouri? No. Yeah, that could be.
Well, there are snow emergency routes, right? That you're not supposed to park your car on.
But
right?
do they?
Main
Yeah.
thoroughfares and everything else, where your car is supposed to get towed if you're there so that they have the ability to clear the main thoroughfares. But designate spots for removal, parking regulations to benefit snow removal. But now you're still going to have piles of snow you got to get rid of.
Yeah.
All right. You want to do anything? You want to go to ask the executive?
Yes, sure.
Before we do that, just want to pop this up and say thank you to everyone. New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast, consisting of New York's finest retired and unfiltered with John, Eric, and Marlon, the 10-4 Tavern with Pete Friselli and Tommy Joyce, and us here at the Executive Perspective, reached a milestone last week, or this week, I'm sorry, of over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And that's because of you. So we appreciate the support. We appreciate everybody going out there. Again, if you haven't, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Keep the algorithm going. We're hoping that the algorithm changes now that we're over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, because we seem to have gotten pushed down. A lot of times it's the topics that we talk about, law enforcement. All right, I'm getting texted.
Yeah, and I just want to thank everybody, especially the people in the chat, right? They're the ones that drive our conversations. They're the ones that help us when we say something that's not right or wrong. I love if somebody wants to disagree with us, that's very welcomed. We love to talk about things, love to tell our stories, love to hear your stories. So, everybody in the chat and all our subscribers, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And, we very happy that you've pushed us over this milestone. So, this is a great thing for the network, and really have to give kudos to John and Eric, who started this, a small little podcast, as they often say, that nobody watches. But geez, we really appreciate everybody, and we hope you all keep watching us, and we hope we provide you with information that you may or may not have, or we confirm things, or we fight against things. But like I said, we really appreciate every one of you, and we love all our subscribers. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Really appreciate it. We have more people right now watching on X. And again, the interactive, you see how interactive we are with the chat, how supportive we are, how supportive our chat is. We really appreciate that. It's a big part of our show, and we enjoy that banter. We enjoy the back and forth. And, like you said, it's a First Amendment platform. We appreciate opposing opinions. We oppose each other sometimes. We don't have the same opinion on matters. That's what makes it, a podcast, not a newscast, right? Because we're talking about our perspectives and our opinions from our life experience, our work experience. So we appreciate everything that you're saying. It's never a fight. It's never an argument. We just want you to be respectful, and that's it. And if you're not respectful, that's when we're going to lash out a little bit, or maybe take your comments down. But we don't like to do that. We like to engage, and we appreciate it. And we encourage everybody that's on X to swing over to a YouTube channel at the Finest Unfiltered, and find the Executive Perspective and the other shows, and go in and get involved in the chat, because other people aren't going to see your chat. You can't see what the chat that we're talking about, and they can't see your comments if you're not in YouTube, unless I put your comments up into the bottom of the show here. So
I don't know. I know I forgot, but I apologize. I want to give a shout out to Marlon too, because Marlon does a lot of the intel work, has a lot of inside information, is good with all the graphics and everything else he does. So, appreciate everything that Marlon's done for the network and all his input. He's usually on, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays with John and Eric. He does the round tables and stuff. So he really does a phenomenal job. So, I don't know if
Marlon started out behind the scenes as
Yep.
consulting and helping out. He's the one that did our logo. So credit to him and thank you for the Executive Perspective logo, that it's too intricate that I couldn't get embroidered shirts done for us. That was a nightmare. So if anybody knows a really good embroiderer, hit us up, please. I tried to reach out to Kaz, but he didn't answer me. But we really appreciate it. And we're going to move on now. I just want to hit this one comment. And I see Marlon. It took me a minute, but I know what you're talking about now. And thank you very much. She's just giving me some advice in the background on how to handle certain comments and how to keep them without losing them. Don't get me wrong. I understand this happens every time. That's not the comment I wanted, but I'm going to read it anyway. Samurai. It's always a snowpocalypse. Sanitation does a great job, but they can do better. Hey, everybody can always do better. We can all do better, right? But Gia is saying, Gia 110 M4L. Ron, first you say Sanit's doing a hell of a job. Now you say a decent job. Make up your mind, pal. Hell of a job, decent job. I think that's the same. I think they're doing a good job. Is that clear enough? All right. So we really appreciate it. I'm going to save this for now. Actually, I'm going to have to ask Marlon how to do what he's talking about. If I star it, Marlon, does it get pinned to the top? Is that what you're talking about? But anyway, so we're going to go to the portion of the show called, do I not have it up here? I did not bring it into the show today. Give me 1 second. You got anything else you want to talk about for a second, Rob, while I do this?
No, I mean, everybody's, talking about the snow still in the chat, which I totally agree. I mean, could sanitation done a better job? Absolutely. Do I think maybe there was a slowdown? Was there a little bit of, take our time with snow removal? That could also happen. Could it be that Jessica Tisch is no longer the sanitation commissioner and they're not tracking the vehicles like they were tracking them last time? I don't know. But yeah, I think there should be a plan. I agree with Modern Samurai had mentioned. There should definitely be a plan in action. We used to do, have OEM and everybody would sit down and what's going to happen during the snowstorm, how the police department are going to respond, fire department. I saw a video on Twitter where one of the fire engines couldn't get to the job because they were blocked. I think it was the bike lane wasn't cleared appropriately, and they probably used that as their emergency lane. So there's issues at hand. So safety is a concern, and I think they should have come up with a better plan. They need a little bit more, a little bit help. But what they do, what they've done in the past, they if the streets are clear, they've done some stuff. But I think wholeheartedly, yeah, they need to develop some sort of attack plan. So.
All right, very good. I don't disagree. All right, so this is the portion of the show, Ask an Executive, where Ron and Rob answer questions from the chat. This is where we give you an opportunity to ask two retired executives. A lot of times people don't have the access to executives to ask questions, or they might not feel comfortable doing so. So here we allow you to ask us questions on topic, off topic, about anything involving policing, and we'll try and give you an answer from our perspective. You can also, at any time, offline, if you come up with something and you think of something, you can send these questions to the executive perspective at gmail.com, and Rob and I will answer you back and bring up your question on the show if we feel it's appropriate, but we'll get back to you either way. Or you can follow us on X at Exec Perspective on X, and you can DM us. Our DM is open to everybody. DM us a question, and we will keep your identity confidential. We're not going to blow up who you are. We'll put out your question. If it's DM'd or if it's emailed, we'll copy it so there's no identifying information on there, and we'll put it up on the next show for the answers. So let's get to it. Modern Samurai had a question. That's not it. This is it. Ron Rob, do you think it's okay that bosses get promoted to spots like deputy chief, assistant chief, etc., with no arrest investigative experience, or should they be capped at certain ranks because they lack experience? And I think this question might be coming up from a topic that was on the Finest Unfiltered this morning with Levon Holly being promoted and put into a spot in the detective bureau, and he's got minimal collars, no felony collars on record. And the debate was, how do you have a position like that with no collars? How do you direct people and give direction on making arrests and how to process arrests properly and how to prepare for court testimony and so forth when you haven't done it yourself? So what's your take on that, Rob?
It's a very slippery slope right there. Do you force people to make collars that they normally wouldn't? You could have a person that doesn't make any collars and is forced. The sergeant goes out and gets them a collar and says, "Here's your number for the month," or here's this, here's that. It could be an assigned collar that the person gets credit for. So I don't know if you can actually put a specific number on that. What I do think is there should be some sort of training program that they go through, an executive training program where they actually learn leadership courses, learn how to lead people, specifically to instances where they may not have done anything. Could you have put me in? I had no investigative experience at all. Could you have put me into a detective bureau? Yeah, you could have. But you know what? I wouldn't, and I say this all the time, I wouldn't have told any detective, this is how you do the case, and this DD5 is wrong, this ECMS you're doing wrong. So I would learn it. I would learn it and then understand it. You could be a boss and lead people and not have to specifically know everything about what's going on. What you do is you surround yourself with people that are smart and more intelligent than you are and that know the job, and you learn from them. So I don't know this guy, Levon Holly. I understand he had no felony arrests. So I don't know how he reacts to specific incidences, but I would hope that he doesn't go in there and start telling people how to make felony arrests when I don't know if he really knows how to make them. So it depends on the person. And I don't think it can specifically be put a specific number on it, on how many this and how many that you have to have, because I just think people could put, you could be somebody in narcotics and not do any, you could just take the collars and not really do any investigative work. And then you have a lot of collars. So I don't know. It's a very slippery slope. I don't know. I think that the job does a poor job, putting people into leadership roles and training them as leaders. You just don't promote people and say, now you're a leader. You don't get that golden box, like I've said before, upstairs in the PC's office, and all the wisdom and knowledge goes into your head. You got to learn how to be a leader, learn how to be a supervisor. And you know what? Take care of your men and women. That's the most important thing. You got to support them because nobody else is supporting them right now.
Well, case in point, you've said it yourself on your interview and on our show several times. You went to ESU. You weren't an E-man.
No.
Right? You went as a captain, as an executive into emergency services. And what did you do? You went there. You became a sponge. You went to as much training as possible. You surrounded yourself with good people. You took the advice of people with the experience even though you had the rank and you worked with it. I've said it several times too. I've showed up on the scene with emergency services and been told what to do and smiled sweetly and said, okay, no problem, because I know that they are the experts on the scene. They have the knowledge. As far as having collars, I don't know what the collars. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I understand what people are saying, where you need to have that experience in order to. You should always have experience if you're going to ask somebody to do something. You shouldn't ask somebody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself, right? That's the thing that we say about good leadership, right? As far as investigative assignments, a lot of captains go the investigative route, and haven't been in the squad. I've seen it work. I've seen it not work. I honestly think that you should have some type of experience in the field that you're going into when it becomes that specialized and intricate. As far as, listen, ESU, it's tactical. They send you for the training in piecemeal, unfortunately, right? And again, if you go into an investigative assignment as an executive and you don't have the investigative experience, like you said, could you have done it? Could I have done it? I think so. I don't think I would want to. I did turn down ESU at one point. It was my personal thing because I might have been short-sighted, because I said, if I can't go through the 9 months training, how do I tell a guy what to do or a girl what to do that's gone through that 9 months of training? And you handled it well. You excelled at it. You were respected within the community of emergency services because of the way you handled yourself and the way that you led while you were there. Could I have probably done the same with the same mentality of not thumping my chest that I'm the boss and hear me roar and you're going to do what I say, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent? Those bosses won't survive. Those bosses won't survive. The units won't survive. You'll have revolts and squads that have people that don't have competent leadership. It's very difficult for them to thrive. So I'm kind of a little bit mixed depending on where it is. I wish Tommy Joyce or somebody was in the chat or if there's anybody that was a squad boss. It's Terry. You bring somebody in that has no squad experience, it makes it harder on you because they don't understand the case investigations and what it really takes, and maybe they only heard about Pulaski's checklist and think that that's the way that you run a case, when that's not how you run a case. It's an ancillary thing. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed a little bit about it.
Yeah, I would also say that, I'm not trying to boast, but I have over 300 collars. So it does help knowing that you can, I know the process, right? So if somebody's stuck with the vouchering and they're stamping, every dollar bill that they recovered as evidence, that takes a long time. I know if they're to get their prisoner transported down to central booking is a pain in the balls. So I understand, and I understand, going down and testifying. I understand how the grand jury, how to present something in the grand jury. I know how to handle myself in trials. So I totally understand that having that experience definitely helps. And I don't know if everybody's getting that experience. I don't want to see a guy that actually didn't do anything and hid their whole career and then all of a sudden gets into that particular position because of their rank or because of cronyism or nepotism. So I agree with that. So the experience does matter. I do think, like you just said, there are positions where you can get into and not have the experience, and depending on the person, you can learn. But it does. And as far as education, we know that he has to have at least a bachelor's degree. So, right? So we know that. I don't know.
I'm not, I don't hold a lot of
I'm
weight.
not big on the education either, because I'm not afraid to admit it. I got my associate's degree with Rockland Community College in criminal justice. And then I went to Empire State College to get my bachelor's degree. Was Empire State the best college in the world? No, absolutely not. And I felt so bad about going to Empire State that after that I did the Marist program and got my master's because I felt like I cheated myself. And then there was no pressure. I had the pressure to get the bachelor's because I was on the list to make captain,
Right.
so I had to do it. So education is a slippery slope, you know. So
How many life experience credits did you get from Empire State?
well, that's the thing, you know. I got life experience credits for SNU. I got for anti-crime. I think I don't know, basket weaving. I got one for, you know. So, but yeah, 100%.
Yeah. No, listen, it is what it is, and it, you know, it really it depends on the person and how they attack it and how they address it. Like we said, you know, if you go in there open-minded and knowing, and listen, what do we always say? If you're the smartest person in the room, get out of the room.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I'm in the wrong room if I'm the smartest person in the room. You know, I always wanted to surround myself, and I've always given credit to my success to the teams that I've been able to build. That was my forte, you know, or whatever. My expertise was being able to build the right team to get the job done. It wasn't me getting the job done. I'm the make or break, right? If it's good, it's great. I'm great. If it's bad, I suck. You know, put the right people in, put the right people on the right seats on the bus, and the bus goes down the road evenly. You know, You don't put the right people. You got people that go in, and now they want to displace entire units because they want to, you know, have the luck, you know, the life of luxury and take over big office space and bring over a huge administrative staff when the previous commander had 2 or 3 people. Now you want to bring over 15 people. So you're going to displace an entire narcotics unit. That's ridiculous. I worked in that building, like PSA 4. I worked there. That place is jam packed. Where are you? I don't know where you're putting these people.
And the other thing is you got to get.
Holly's doing is supposedly he's going in and he's displacing an entire unit to make room for himself and his
cronies.
His cronies. But I don't know the man. I've never worked with them, and you know this is what I'm hearing, and that's not the way to lead. And like they said on the Day Show today, you know, Kenny or somebody, Chief Kenny or somebody should be putting his ass in check.
Yeah. And listen, I'll also say, you know, every time, you know, if somebody gave me a great idea and I mentioned it in one of my meetings, I didn't take credit for it, right? You got to give credit to the people that do the work and give you the ideas, because if you take credit for it, then you're a bigger fool than I ever thought. You know, you have to give credit to the people that help you, and don't be afraid. If you're talking to the chief of department or the police commissioner and you say something and he says, well, that's a great idea. Well, hey, Commissioner, it wasn't mine. It was Eddie Lutz from Truck 3 that told me this. And give credit where credit's due. Hey, I thought it was a great idea, and that's why I brought it to you. So that okay, you know. And then the other thing is you know, it's you know, you can do any job you want, but learn the job, right? That's the main thing. And there's ways to learn it. You know, if you want to do something, you know, learn what they're doing. So.
100%. 100%, I agree with you. And, you know, it is a slippery slope. That's the only question we got so far today. Samurai, you're running solo. You took up a whole Ask an Executive segment. We're 2 hours and 54 minutes into it. We got almost 400 people. You know,
the Sleepy Joe gave me a spot on, so
I was ignoring it. We're not counting spot ons. We gave it to P.O. White. We're not counting spot ons today.
So me and P.O. White are 1-to-1.
No. P.O. White is the winner. We gave it to him at the beginning.
All right. I forfeit my Sleepy Joe spot on to Officer White tonight.
There you go. Del Rey, always slipping in at the end with his question. Del Rey 53, have you ever seen a situation? Oh, you're right, Sleepy Joe. I missed that question. All right. I'll get back to it next. Have you ever seen a situation where a highly experienced captain was assigned to an A house, which to those who don't understand what that is, that's a busy precinct. The example is 7-5 as their first CO command. If not, why doesn't the upper echelon allow it? I have seen it happen. I have seen it fail miserably. And I'll tell you why. You should never go to an A house first. I know very competent people, and you can be very competent as you move up the ranks. You can be very competent as a junior executive. You could be in charge of a detail. You could be a zone captain in the detective bureau, and even if it's the 7375 zone, whatever the case may be, you need to learn how to be a commanding officer of a precinct. My first precinct, I was the borough crime commanding officer. I was a commanding officer of impact in 3 different commands in 2 different boroughs. I was the task force, Queens North Task Force CO. That does not mean that I knew how to run a command. When I went, I was the 111 precinct. It was a slow command. You call that a C house, right? Not even a B house. The 111 is a C house, right? It's Nassau County West, you know? And you still have to learn how to be a commander, to deal with personnel issues, which is huge, even though I did deal with personnel issues in my other commands, right? But it's different in a precinct because you're responsible for everything that's going on in that precinct, in that community. You have to learn to deal with politicians. You have to learn to deal with the community. You have to learn to deal with how to regulate personnel throughout an entire command, make sure that the right people are in the right places, make sure that your squads are evenly distributed, make sure that you have the right administrative staff in place. All these things you learn at your first command, no matter what you did before, no matter where you worked. You could work in the chief department's office, I don't care. You should not be going to an A house as your first command. Your A house should always be a second or third command because you need to pay your dues. You need to learn the job. It's not an easy job. It's a very rewarding job. It's a very taxing job. It's a very demanding job. It takes you away from your family. But once you leave it, you look back and you go, it was probably one of the best times that you had on the job, no matter how miserable it made, no matter how many long hours you had. So I don't think that you should go to an A house as your first command.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with you. I think, you know, it's a progression. It's a learning experience. It's hard to just go right into an A house and learn everything that you have to do to be a commanding officer. It's even hard for an executive officer unless you have a strong CO already there. So, I mean, it's important to learn the job, and, you know, let's take baby steps. You know, you throw somebody into the fire, you know, unless you're doing it to hook the person up and get them promoted, which isn't the right thing to do because you're promoting them into.
Well, you can promote anybody anywhere nowadays. I got promoted in the 111.
Yeah,
anybody can get promoted anywhere.
Right, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
So,
those days are over. We've talked about that. The days of, you know, you take over for somebody and they were a certain rank. Your expectation is you're going to make that rank. Those days are over. They make whoever they want, wherever they want.
Of course.
All right, let's get back to Sleepy Joe. You guys ever hear of anyone tank Comstat on purpose? No.
Me? I did. Not,
did you?
It was, yeah, it was a captain in the in Manhattan North, and he Izzo and Timlin were the CO.
Oh, God.
At the time, CO and XO, and he just bombed it, and he did it on purpose. And Izzo brought him into the office afterwards and said, you know, what's the problem? And this was his exact words. He said, Chief, you know how they tell you to, if you're at the station, either get on the train or get off the train? He goes, personally, Chief, I'm not even on the station. I don't even care. And he got dumped to, he became the midnight duty captain. And then he would do, his report writing was so atrocious that Izzo used to, I was the admin lieutenant at the time, and Izzo would go, hey, why is this guy's writing is so bad? Something's got to be done with him. He goes, either you talk to him or somebody else. So what we did is we told, listen, inspections, you're going to have to go out every time this guy has something to do and write the 49s. So he didn't do anything then. He used to come out of the locker room in his sandals and just sign the 49 that was complete because inspections did it. And then Izzo brings me into his office and he goes, you know, he's really writing better 49s. He's really improved himself. I go, Chief, I think we should keep him on midnights, but yeah, he's doing much better now.
Yeah.
So
don't look at the overtime budget of inspections at this point.
Yeah, exactly. They were loving it, man. They were loving it. But yeah, he was terrible. He's like, I'm get on the train or get off. Nope, I'm not even on the station, Chief. That's it. So
yeah, but is that, was that intentionally tanking it or just incompetence?
Well, I mean, I don't think he wanted to be a CO. He was happy as a pig and poo. And when he became the midnight duty captain, because he was
a commanding officer, or he was an XO that just happened to cover.
Oh, he was a commanding officer, and he became the midnight duty captain. And he was actually, I mean, he was getting overtime, right? While they were writing the 49, and he would be sleeping in the dorm. So, he was living the life of Riley. He was getting time on the books. Because that time there was no cash overtime. It was time on the books, and 2 other guys are writing the 49 for him. So that's it.
All right, we got a youngster on board.
I saw that.
The 919, transferring from the 120 to the 67 tomorrow for FTU, I'm guessing. Tips, mindset going in. I used to do orientation for the rookies, and I used to talk to them. And, the best advice that you could give, right, is God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Do twice as much or more listening and less talking, right? Don't think that you know anything coming from the 120. 120 can be a very busy house. Absolutely. I'm very familiar with it. I worked EMS out in the 120. So very familiar with it. You go into the 6-7. The 6-7 is a very busy house. It's an A house. I worked as a cop in the 7-0 in the adjoining precinct. You have a lot of violence in the area. You have a lot of great people in the area. Don't go in there thinking everybody is violent. Don't go in there thinking everybody is bad because of what you hear. There is violence, so you have to be, your head has to be on a swivel. You have to be careful. Be mindful of where you are at all times. You're going to a new location. What we say all the time, always know where you are. Always be looking up at that street corner. Know where you are. Know your post. Know your surroundings. When you get on a foot post, walk that foot post. Look at everything that's going on. Notice where the people are hanging out. Notice where people are watching you and watch them back. But you'll find out that the people that think that they know the most are the people that are in the class before you. And those aren't the people to listen to. Pay attention, listen to what everybody says, and you'll learn quickly who's full of shit and who's trying to help you. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of seniority on this job. And so, excuse me, but there's still a lot of great cops, and there's going to be a lot of great cops in the 6-7 because it's a busy command.
I totally agree with everything you said. Keep your head on a swivel, watch your back, talk to the people that, you trust the most. Ask them the questions when you can. Not certain times you might not want to be able to ask them. So, but what I will also do is listen. You're welcome on this podcast anytime to ask us questions. You can ask us through the email. We're here to help. Ask anybody. You can ask John, Eric, Marlon, Tom, and Pete. You can throw a question up anytime in the chat. And if you don't want to throw it up in the chat, you can also email us. We keep it confidential too. So don't be afraid. We're here to help as well. So, and what I will tell you is just be really careful out there. Always protect yourself, protect your partner, and keep an eye on your 6, as Stephen S. would always say. Watch your 6. Always watch your back. So, and be careful.
There's another question I just lost. All right. Joe Mango has a question for me as an EMS related question. What was your favorite type of job to go to? Mine is the cardiac arrest jobs and jobs where the patient can ambulate before we carry them. Laugh my ass off out loud. I liked trauma jobs. I like trauma jobs because, if you go in there and you're aggressively treating people, you could make a difference. You could save somebody's life. Cardiac arrests, they're tough. Very few come back. So they're tough. I've had, my share of saves, But the vast majority of cardiac arrests is a sad thing because you're not going to have a positive outcome. And a lot of times you're dealing with the family, and then you're in the ER when they're getting pronounced, and you're out cleaning up your bus and getting everything ready, and you see the family and everything. So I wasn't a big fan of those. The trauma jobs, I like the trauma jobs. They're fast paced. If you know what you're doing, you get in there and you get aggressive with the treatment, and you can make a big difference. And then sometimes, the medical ones that can be tricky. If you know what you're doing, you can do good.
I never was an EMS. I was an EMT, but I only rode on the ambulance for my certification. But I can tell you that my as a cop, my favorite EMS job is 55 bus on the scene.
I knew it.
And just to add what Sleepy Joe said, the advice to the officer going to the 6-7 is always know your location. That's solid,
Yeah. Always know where you are. Always look up at the corners and be familiar with your post as well. Know not just what street you're on, but know, even if you don't know the exact cross street, know an address that you can throw out. Before you go into a building, look up and make sure. Well, always look up before you go into a building so you don't get what's called airmail. But look up so you know what the address is when you're going into that building. Because once you're in there and the shit hits the fan and you're calling for an 85 and you're saying, you're on Church Avenue, but you don't know the number on Church Avenue. Church Avenue is a long street. Bedford Avenue, the Cortelyou Road, all these roads, they go for miles through different precincts, And then
I was going to tell you, I used to have to look up when I went into the 4-1 because they used to dump water buckets on you.
Yeah, you said that. Yeah. What's your perspective with certain we talked about him in the past. We're not fans. I've thrown him out of PSA 2 when I was the XO. So
yeah, that's the best thing is when you're a higher rank from the shoe fly comes in, you can slow down, big guy, get out. It's my house.
No, we were the same ranks. Me and Mike Harrington, me and Kevin Harrington rather threw him out. He came in, he was breaking the desk officer's balls, but we were both working. We came out screaming at him and threw him out. Of course, we were down at Jaffe's office, the next day. But
well,
whatever. All right. We got anything else here? I'm a little behind. See any other questions that came over while I was?
No, that was it.
Del Rey blowing him up as Vinny Solano. We know about it. Yeah, there's Jaffe is not still on the job. Jaffe is retired. And when she came in, I was the borough commander for Bronx, Queens. And she was working something with the Department of Education or something, whatever she's doing in her afterlife. And she came in. And I've said this story before. She came in and, oh, hi, Ron. What? First time. And I worked for her. And she launched me out of PSA 2 into Queens over some bullshit. But first time she ever called me by my first name. First time ever. Because now she wants something, right? So she was there to speak at the community council meeting in PSA 7. So I go up to the CO of PSA 7. I go, she speaks after every other speaker. She doesn't get any courtesy. She's not the chief of housing. She's not a 3-star chief. She's Joanne Jaffe. She's here on a personal whatever. I don't care. But it was the first time she ever called me by my first name. And I was like, oh, Joanne, how's your time been treating you? Whatever. All right. I think that's all we got.
Well, Martin Summarize asked me if I don't know if Steve Griffin, I think he was a sergeant when I was there in the 2-3, and I think he became a captain. I don't know if he got promoted after that. I don't know if he's still on the job, Martin Samurai. I'm not sure, but he good guy. I love Steve. I thought he was really great. So, and my one Jaffe story was we had a barricaded perp with a gun, and his hostage was his grandmother inside an apartment in the 4-2, I believe it was, in one of the housing developments. And the person was actually, Espo was on the scene. The person kept shooting through the door. He shot so many times through the door that we had to put a ballistic blanket in front of the door because the rounds were eventually coming through. And Joanne Jaffe came to the scene because she was the chief of housing. And she goes, I want to talk to him. Maybe I can talk to him out. And she knocked on the door. And she goes, and he's like, what? And she's like, hi, my name's Joanne Jaffe. I'm the chief of housing. I'd like to talk to you for a minute. And the guy just let a barrage of bullets at the door. And every time she goes, let me try it again. Every time she did it, the guy would shoot. And finally we had to say, Chief, it's not working. You got to come with us. We're getting more rounds to the door now than we were before. So that was my one EDP story with her and craziness. But
I got an EDP story for every time I was with her.
Yeah, all right.
We'll just leave it at that.
I hear you.
All right. Well, once again, thank you, everybody. Another great engagement with the chat. We love it. 3 hours, 11 minutes in, when we always say we're going to try and keep it on 2 hours. And so, another good show. Stuff we didn't even get to. We'll try to get to maybe next week if it's still topical. We really appreciate everything. Rob, final words before I close it out with the shows.
No, I mean, again, thanks everybody. Thanks to John, Eric, Marlon, Tom, Pete, Ron, yourself, for getting us to over that 100,000 subscribers. Appreciate everybody. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for being part of this family. We just want to keep it going. We want to help. We want to be able to give our stories. We want to be able to hear your stories. So we really appreciate everything that everybody's done. And you know what? I'm going to tell you another thing. I appreciate Mamdani for giving us more stuff to talk about. Craziness and everything else. But really appreciate all of you. And as always, please be safe out there. Watch your backs, whether you're on the job, retired. Keep an eye out and protect yourselves. But thank you all.
Yeah, and it's funny you thanking Mamdani, and we always thank the Adams for all the content. And I said this on in the chat on Eric and John and Marlon. I don't know, the Monday, maybe it was Monday's show, and I said, how. With the executive perspective, I never really wanted to get into politics. I didn't want us to be a political show. I wanted to talk about police work and talk about how we can, break down instances and help people to get through the job easier and navigate these landmines that are out there that could really hurt somebody's career, and maybe help them to navigate it better so that they get through it easier and safer and with better clarity and mental clarity. But it became impossible. I don't like talking politics, especially with certain family members. Love you. But it's impossible because of how politics has completely infected the NYPD, where it was supposed to be apolitical. And I pretty much remained apolitical throughout my entire career, and I've talked about that, where I worked very close with people that I am on polar opposite political ideologies. So, this is our 50th show. My mother just texted us, congratulations on our 50th show. This is our 50th show. We're actually going on a year. We're going on a year. We took 2 days off for Christmas and New Year's. So we've made it to our first year. We started in February of 2025. So it's been a great run. Things have been great. We started on the network when it was just Eric and John and Sal Greco, who's moved on to his own channel now on YouTube. So, you can search him on YouTube to follow him on the Sal Greco show. He's a part of building this network and these numbers as well. And Tom and Pete came on with the 10-4 Tavern, and we've made this network, and I've enjoyed it. and I've enjoyed working alongside with you, Rob. I appreciate you coming on this journey with me. I didn't want to do it. I couldn't sit in front of the camera by myself. So, there wouldn't be an executive perspective without you being on the other end of the camera. So I appreciate that. And again, the fans, 104,000 subscribers is a huge accomplishment. John and Eric are obviously the catalysts to all of that. But I think the network that they've grown is a phenomenal thing. You get different perspectives on the different shows, and I'll leave it at that. So with that, coming up on the next show on the network will be Friday. It's going to be the roundtable with John, Eric, and Marlon, and I'm sure they're going to be talking about whatever's the most recent. They're going to continue talking about everything that's going on in the NYPD, in the city with local politics, as well as state politics, because Governor Hochul has selected her running mate for lieutenant governor. Former city council speaker Adrian Adams is now been announced as her running mate. So, there's a lot of talk, a lot of back and forth that it might be Jessica Tisch. I don't know. I'm not that embedded with politics, like I said, but there was a lot of talk about that. And then today it came out that the selection is Adrian Adams. So I'm sure that they'll be speaking on that because they're very, into the politics surrounding everything. So I'm sure that'll be one of the main topics, if not the main topic. And then they'll be back again on Monday, and they'll be following up with anything that's gone on since Friday, 0805. So you're going to see John, Eric, and Marlon, New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast, 0805. Tuesday at 7:05, you got the 10-4 Tavern with Tommy Joyce and Pete Faselli, bringing in great guests from all around the country, and leaders, supervisors, detectives, cops. Last night they had the copper on from Chicago, from Chi-Town, and it was a great episode, talking about his career, where it started out, where it went. Go back and watch that on the repeat for sure. And then this coming Tuesday night, they're going to have on Vernon Gerbeth, who's been on the shows before. He's been on the 10-4 Tavern. He's been on New York's finest retired and unfiltered. We've had scheduling conflicts where we were going to have him on, but Wednesdays don't work for him. But he'll be on, and he'll be talking about practical homicide investigations. He's considered the godfather of homicides. He's an NYPD Bronx homicide CO. He has trained thousands, probably tens of thousands of homicide investigators across the world. So it's always an interesting conversation with Vernon. So check that out next Tuesday, 7:05 p.m. And then we'll be back, of course, on Wednesday at 5:05 p.m. But let me go back. Modern Samurai, you are the man. Another super chat. So I'm going to read out all three super chats again. So Modern Samurai, the officers should have challenged him to a duel while saying my name is Inigo Montoya. You cut my overtime. Prepare to be apprehended. A good shoot, in my opinion. Great discussion, gents. Appreciate that. Appreciate all your engagement. And every show. Even though we didn't agree on everything this show, that's great. Love it. 516 Diecast 199. Chris here. Would love to work for you bosses. That's great. Would have loved to probably had you working for me, but I ain't working no more. This is the work I do now. Just this podcast to keep me a little bit busy. And then Modern Samurai, last second, throwing up another 50. We appreciate you so much. 50 in cash OT for 50 episodes. So thank you so much. We really
I think he could have split that. He could have give you 25 in time and give me 25 cash.
No, you don't get the cash. You're no cash. You're no cash.
Yeah. Thank you, Modern Samurai.
Modern Samurai, we appreciate you, brother. Always. And again, we'll be back next Wednesday at 5:05 p.m. Until then, everyone, be safe out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.